Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, I understand we have some regrets for this evening.
Yes, we have regrets from Councillor Grant and Councillor Bird.
Thank you. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Thank you. Now, before we resolve into committee of the whole, I'd like to just take care of some housekeeping notes for everybody's convenience. It appears that we have called two public hearings, one into an official plan amendment and one into the new 2014 zoning bylaw. And we've been rewarded with a lot of interest from the public. And we have about, by my count, somewhere between 4 and 5 hours worth of delegations from the public to look forward to. And we have a 3-hour meeting this evening. So, and of course, my calculation of the time is based on the theory that each delegation might use their full allotted time. So I want to just mention a couple of things. First, Council, we need a spillover time to recess to if we don't finish tonight. And I'm proposing from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock on Tuesday, tomorrow. Can everyone make that? Or can a quorum make that? Can I see a show of hands of who can make it? Well, that won't happen then. Oh, wait, I got one. That's 2 of us, 3 of us, 4 of us. Not quite there, guys, not quite there. All right, I also have for your consideration 9 to noon Wednesday morning. How many can make that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I need another one. All right. Well then. Okay, I'm out.
Wednesday evening.
There's something wrong with Wednesday evening. All right, well then what I will propose is we will recess until immediately following the Planning and Development Council meeting on the 12th. Since you all have to be here for that, and in theory are all planning to be here for that anyway. And at the moment, my appreciation of that agenda is that we can probably dispatch that fairly. I've heard there's like 4 items. Madam Commissioner, do you want to give us any advice on that?
Our recollection of the agenda, and it is recollection, was that it had a fair number of items that would take some time to complete.
Oh, well maybe the 12th isn't going to work either. So let's go back to Councillor Elger's suggestion. What on Wednesday night were you suggesting?
Yeah, Wednesday evening, I think it's 7 o'clock.
There's something, I have something that night. Oh yes, there's a Residents Association annual general meeting that night. I shouldn't like to interfere with that. So Wednesday morning, how many volunteers do I have for Wednesday morning? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wednesday morning then at 9 a.m. All right. 8? I could, but I'm not sure the public's really into that. So let's go with what we just agreed to before we lose that again. All right, so then the next point is everyone who wishes to bring information to council who's registered to delegate will go first, and then I'll be polling the audience for others who've had things occur to them as they listen. And I would just say that we've received written submissions from many people who have also signed up to delegate verbally. And there's no benefit to telling us verbally what you told us in writing. So if you believe that you're going to be twice as persuasive, I have to urge you to rethink. We give everything its due consideration, and everyone on council and on staff reads surpassing well. So you might You might, if you've given us a written submission, you might want to limit yourself to highlights or something, or points that you wish to stress. You are, of course, free to delegate verbally as you like, but I just mentioned in the interest of time management that if you've already taken the trouble to give us a written submission, you may not really need to read it to us. So with that, I think we've covered all the housekeeping we need to cover, and I'll look for a motion, mover and a seconder, to resolve in the committee of the whole. Councillor Lapworth and Councillor Khan, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Now we have our public hearing tonight. Item number 1 is the official plan amendment for the in-zone conformity and the housekeeping matters, and that's item 1. And we're also hearing a public meeting report for the proposed new comprehensive zoning bylaw. That's the in-zone project. And these are not, this is not a decision night for either item. This is a intake night, an information intake night. Council and staff will be considering staff's recommendations on the matter at a later date after staff have had time to reflect on the input tonight and the other input that they've received, and to bring back a recommendation. So we're going to turn now to our planning director, Ms. Dana Anderson, and she will start us off.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Thank you for this opportunity to hold a special public meeting this evening related to the in-zone project. In-zone, as you know, is the town's new comprehensive zoning bylaw, and it's an extremely important town project, which is recognized both under council's strategic plan as well as part of the Vision 2057 framework. The province of Ontario's growth plan required the town of Oakville, along with all of the other greater Golden Horseshoe municipalities, to have an approved official plan in place in conformity with the growth plan policies, which had to meet the intensification targets and growth targets by June of 2009. And in June of 2009, as this council will recall, Oakville was one of only 2 municipalities in the entire greater Golden Horseshoe area to have an approved comprehensive new official plan to address the province's requirements. And Livable Oakville, as you know, is now fully approved by the Ontario Municipal Board and represents our town-approved approach to growth and the management of growth. We are far ahead of many other municipalities in this regard, and the Livable Oakville policies clearly define the 6 growth areas where we direct the majority of growth, clearly protect our stable residential communities, and clearly protect our employment land supply. And in order for Livable Oakville's policies to be strong and effective, they must be implemented by an equally clear and concise zoning bylaw. The translation of the approved Livable Oakville plan into the new zoning bylaw is critical. And the Planning Act requires us, the town, to have a new zoning bylaw in place to implement our approved Livable Oakville plan within 3 years of its approval. And once again, Oakville has stepped up to the plate, and we're on track with this timing. Many other municipalities are again looking to us for how to do it right, and using Oakville now in terms of process as a best practice. The new bylaw does bring with it many, many changes, many that not everyone is in agreement with, many that tighten up the rules and regulations to ensure that we are carrying out the objectives under Livable Oakville to protect and enhance the character of our stable residential communities. Many are changes that remove old permissions under the old bylaw to phase out types of development that are no longer permitted under Livable Oakville, and many that implement the zoning we need to address growth in the areas where this council has directed it to go. We are not opening up or revising approved policies of Livable Oakville at this time. The next comprehensive review of that plan, if required, will do so. The only changes proposed to Livable Oakville are those that ensure that the 2 documents work in sync. This zoning project has been led by a team of staff comprised of both planning and building department staff managed by Mr. Joe Nethery, and this team has been fully engaged over the last 2 years in substantial research, technical review and analysis, stakeholder engagement, public education and consultation, and interaction with the internal staff team and departments, external agencies, and groups, including the in-zone subcommittee of council. And they have provided what I would suggest is unprecedented customer service in relation to inquiries, questions about zoning matters, and understanding the in-zone project. You will hear this evening from both Mr. Nethery and Ms. Gilwoods a summary of the two information reports before you. And I want to emphasize, as you did, Your Worship, that the purpose of tonight's meeting is to present the information in the staff reports, but most importantly, provide an opportunity for the public to provide their input. There are no final recommendations being made by staff, and there are no council decisions at this time. Staff will address the information received this evening, as well as information received after this evening, as opportunities for community input are ongoing, as Mr. Nethery will indicate. And I would suggest that council may wish to hear the two presentations first and then open up to the public. And on that note, I again want to thank council for this opportunity, and I'll turn to Ms. Gilwoods, who's presenting the first item. Thank you.
Good evening. As Dana mentioned, this is the statutory public meeting about the proposed official plan amendment to address in-zone conformity and housekeeping matters. The amendment affects all lands within the livable Oakville plan area. The new zoning bylaw being created through the in-zone project is required to implement the policies of the livable Oakville plan. Through our work to create the new zoning bylaw and our continued use of the livable Oakville plan, we've identified a number of areas in the plan where clarity and consistency could be improved, and potential conflicts could be eliminated. Most of the changes in the proposed OPA are needed to support the translation of the official plan policies into regulations in the town's new comprehensive zoning bylaw. The proposed OPA also includes housekeeping modifications that are technical in nature. There's changes proposed to both the text and schedules of the plan. The proposed official plan amendment has been available online and from the Planning Services Department since September 30th. And we've circulated to the usual technical review departments and agencies, and held 3 open houses to date. So far, we've heard from people seeking clarification about a few areas, most commonly about existing employment use permissions and their translation into the proposed zoning bylaw, certain land use designation boundaries. Some people are seeking more descriptions of changes to the schedules in the plan, and most recently there's been some expression of interest about height permissions in Bronte Village. So tonight we're here to listen to comments about the proposed official plan amendment. Our recommendation before you is that the comments be received. Changes will be made to the proposed official plan amendment in the weeks ahead, and we will report back on those issues in the new year. After tonight, all comments should be directed to me. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Gilwoods. Madam Planning Director, did you want to proceed to the next presentation and then we'll batch questions from council for staff? Or did you want to take it in pieces?
Through your worship to you, the preference would be to allow Mr. Nethery to present his report, but I'm in your hands.
No, I think your plan is a good one. So let's thank Ms. Gilwoods for her presentation, and Mr. Nethery, you're up.
Well, good evening, Your Worship, members of council, and fans of zoning in the gallery and watching at home on Town TV, and who may be stuck on the QE eastbound, I'm told. I have the great pleasure of being able to present staff's public information meeting report on the draft 2014 zoning bylaw. 2.5 exciting years of research, analysis, and public consultation to get to tonight. My agenda to go and plan to go as quickly as possible revolve around a very quick summary of the proposed bylaw content itself, a reiteration of our consultation work to date. We also would like to share some good news stories that have resulted from this consultation, and to demonstrate to Council how the public input that is being received is causing staff, or prompting staff rather, to look at various issues again and reinvestigate and see if there are alternatives to suggest. I'll conclude by explaining the process, how we go forward from today, our technical conclusion on the recommendation, and a key little tidbit for everybody on the proposed date of passage for the new bylaw itself. So sorry to sound like a bit of a broken record, but of course we are implementing the Livable Oakville Plan, its policies and its visions, into enforceable rules, permissions, regulations, and standards to be evaluated when building applications come forward. This slide has made a few appearances at previous presentations. Our project principles. All of our recommendations start off coming with a first check of the policies in the Livable Oakville Plan. Nothing in this document before you tonight is out of conformity with that document, or would be out of conformity once the in-zone conformity OPA is subsequently approved as well. We have looked at 8 particular issues as approved in the project terms, or particular frames of mind rather, that were approved in the project terms of reference, followed up by additional research where it is in fact appropriate. Our automobile-related uses study are a particularly good example. To try and summarize some 400 pages and 32 maps plus appendices in 2 slides, we're looking at a draft bylaw that is modeled on the North Oakville structure, but a little more expanded to recognize the breadth of uses that the Livable Oakville Plan itself contains. 10 parts of the document, each containing a particular set of permissions and regulations associated with a group of uses, a particular administrative issue such as the establishment of zones or definitions, and a brand new set of maps. Staff were hoping to highlight a couple of the key content recommendations that are in the draft before you tonight that we have been hearing particular feedback and inquiries on. With apologies if these are repeats, but this from previous presentations, but it will put everybody on the same page. The passage of a new zoning bylaw is obviously instantaneous once it is approved by a majority of council, but its coming into effect is delayed for a few reasons. One is that we have to get a notice of passing published and circulated to those who are interested, and then there's an appeal period based upon that particular date. So for that minimum amount of time, 17 to 21 days, depending on how fast we all work, there are 2 bylaws in force. That technically means that applications that are filed at that time or are being decided upon at that time need to conform to both bylaws. To try and facilitate that transition with respect to recent approvals that have been obtained, staff have included 3 transition clauses within section 1.9 of the bylaw itself. The first relates to building permit applications that are in fact in process. If somebody came in the day before the new bylaw, well, that's not fair because it'll be a Monday night. If someone comes in the week before with a building permit application and it takes us a couple of weeks to get that resolved, there's a clause in this bylaw that makes sure that those people's rights are protected, and that ensures that those particular zoning, that the 1984 zoning regulations would be reviewed for that application. There are 3 criteria that staff will be using to interpret whether or not that application is sufficient. For recent minor variance authorizations and site plan approvals, be it a conditional stage or at final stage, the second clause proposes to allow not prevent anything in the new bylaw to prevent a building permit from being issued in conformity with those particular regulations. It is not a legalization of those uses. The exemptions, as the regs are currently written, are proposed to cease to exist upon the issuance of that particular building permit. The use, building, or structure would become legal non-conforming. In Part 3 of the bylaw, and I think one of the particularly great achievements from a technical perspective on this project, is a comprehensive set of over 200 new definitions in this bylaw. No more trying to debate the difference between a professional and business office in a commercial zone and a business or professional office in an employment zone. Everybody would just be a business office with the same definition and the same interpretation in each of these designations. This should resolve numerous headaches going forward from an implementation perspective. These definitions are produced through a best practices review That includes recognizing some of our existing definitions, some of the work that was done in 2009, and some of the work that our neighbors have been doing since that time. What staff have been framing in previous presentations as potentially being the defining issue of the consultation process for this project is the proposed -0 suffix zone. Well, the orange looks good on the big screen, at least tonight. Those properties represent residential lands in an RO zone today. The RO zones were introduced through a series of bylaw amendments in 1989 and 1990, implementing an infill housing study, trying to establish what appropriate building regulations were in our stable residential neighborhoods at that time. On the new maps, these areas are proposed to be shown with a -0 after them. The issue, we go into a lot of detail in our technical paper, which was received by the InZone Subcommittee in February of 2012 with respect to some of the challenges that the current regulations as drafted are causing these days. This graphic has been a frequent appearance in our presentations on this. This is an actual lot from an actual RO-zoned neighborhood today, showing the existing building footprint in yellow, the lot coverage potentially available to that lot at 35% in the red hatched overlay, and the front yard shown in the light blue. The house is quite a bit smaller than what the basic message of this drawing is that this house, as it exists, is a lot smaller than the zoning regulations currently permit today. Building preferences and styles have obviously changed in 50, 60 years, which is the age of this particular lot, which creates its own set of issues from a compatibility and conformity perspective. I've done these slides using my hands, but I'm trying not to be too body languagey tonight, so I managed to get Mr. Hannum to produce some handy graphics. If we envision the floor area lot ratio as being an assigned series of units that people can use to create their house, and the floor area lot ratio is a volume-based metric, we're basically dealing with a series of cubes that people are allowed to assemble into dwelling units on their lots. You can assemble them as a bungalow and meet all of the zoning requirements themselves, but if you're looking to do it at 2 stories and the floor area lot ratio limits you to a certain amount of cubes, well, it obviously results in a different looking form. Well, that cubic diagram, going back to a graphic that one of our previous interns, Mr. Rattan, produced, ends up demonstrating the modeling exercise that was undertaken to produce the recommendations that are before you tonight. So this particular lot at this particular lot at this particular size, it is given a particular amount of floor area based on one of the 11 tiers that it fits into it today. That number happens to be 37% on this lot. This is the type of one of many different types of houses that could be built at this site, and it effectively reflects a house that maximizes the lot coverage potentially available to it. So in this scenario, it happened to work out to 24.9%. Do this times 11 categories times 3 different models with a little bit of rounding to accommodate mathematical issues, produces the recommendations that you see in section 6.4.1 of the second draft of the bylaw itself. As the modeling generally works itself out, the bungalows generally match the lot coverages that exist today. And again, when we move that series of cubes up, we end up seeing dramatically reduced lot coverages if the floor area lot ratio is maximized out. And there you have it, the recommendation. We are also recommending in the current draft bylaw the introduction of a front yard averaging metric across all lots within an RO zone framework today. The particular graphic that you see here is a representation based on the same neighborhood that was shown in the aerial photograph earlier, where the houses that were originally built are 40 feet, 14 meters back from the front lot line, which in of itself is quite set back from the edge of the pavement, just the way that the neighborhood got built. We're only dealing with the front lot lines, however. Well, the minimum front yard in this zone today is 25 feet, 7.5 meters. Building styles and preferences being what they are, this results in houses coming a lot closer to the street than exists in the neighborhood, and the jagged sorts of streetscapes that as much as many residents have concerns with, but staff also have concerns with as well. The recommendation as it's proposed right now is to take the average of those 2 lots, if it's of the front yards rather. Let me restart. It is the average of the depths of the front yards of the 2 nearest dwellings. If the difference is greater than 4 meters between those 2, The average is taken, the minimum becomes 2 meters less than that, the maximum becomes 2 meters more than that. And a certain minimum proportion, 75% of the length of the front wall, the main front wall of that dwelling, needs to be within that range. Where the average is, the difference is less than 4 meters, the minimum becomes closer, the maximum becomes further back, 75% within that range. There's some additional regulations that are also proposed in the Dashel-Suffolk zone, but I'm trying to talk as quickly as I can to maximize our conversation. These include maximum height of the first floor level to prevent significantly raised porches, which we do not have a lot of here today in Oakville. A prohibition on decks, balconies, rooftop terraces that have a floor level of 3 meters, 10 feet or greater from surrounding grade to that feature, and maintaining the maximum garage sizes and height reductions as they exist in the bylaw today. Which now takes us to Midtown Oakville, where we have received a couple of questions as to how the process is supposed to roll out. We'll go into a little bit of detail on this in a later slide, but suffice to say, staff cannot recommend full pre-zoning at this time, as is being recommended in other growth areas. There are still some pending policy studies which are near to completion, but not quite there yet. Once those studies are completed, it's anticipated that official plan amendments may be required for those studies, and a corresponding zoning bylaw amendment can be introduced at that time, which would introduce proper zoning recommendation at that time. This also gives staff and council and the public the benefit of having a very focused Midtown discussion, separate of the larger process, where we can go into these particular issues and details into greater depth. There are 2 transition zones proposed at this time, one for the commercial side, one for the employment side. It proposes to freeze the building envelopes as they exist on the effective date of this bylaw, with a limited range of permitted uses within that. So if the retail store closes down and a restaurant proposes to go in, so long as the parking matches out, that would be permitted in that zone. If somebody is looking for a building addition, there is relief available through a minor variance or a zoning bylaw amendment. Within the mixed-use zones themselves, as Ms. Anderson introduced, the current C3R zone is proposed to be replaced with a set of 5 new mixed-use zones. We're emphasizing 3 of them in our presentation tonight. Main Street 1 and the Central Business District CBD zones are proposed to be permitted with a range of residential, community, and straight commercial uses of a wide range. The new metric, which staff are particularly excited about, are introducing the minimum heights as specified in the Livable Oakville plan. In these 2 zones, that's 2 stories, which translates into a 7.5 meter metric. A maximum height in those designations of 4 stories, 15 meters is a metric. One of the items in Ms. Gilwood's official plan amendment rationalizes this particular approach within the Central Business District designation. What it ultimately means is that for many of these C3R zoned areas, which are relatively speaking with corresponding metrics, 3-story maximums, 2 stories in Bronte, are now looking at additional building height permissions when redevelopment occurs. There is a footnote proposed in the tables today that deems buildings that legally existed on the effective date of this bylaw as legal versus legal non-conforming. So if there are, to provide some additional flexibility, should there be an interim, for lack of a better word, an interim redevelopment proposed. The Main Street 2 zone, which is the MU2 on the particular maps, and Kerr Village shown on screen, the heights are increased. Minimum of 4 stories translates to 13.5 meters, which the difference between 13.5 and 15 is that 15 would accommodate all office, 13.5 would be a residential floor plane. 6 stories, 19.5 meters. To ensure that these areas are mixed use, staff are proposing a prohibition on residential uses in first stories of these buildings in the first 9 meters of building depth. I'm not sure what that is in feet. Stairs and lobbies, accesses up to those units are of course permitted to a limited width of the building. We are also looking at a brand new commercial and employment zone framework as set out in the Livable Oakville plan itself. I'm not sure what the commercial framework was in the former official plan, but we have 9 commercial zones in the bylaw today, of which 6 are used. We have 3 employment zones today, which are implementing 1 policy designation. The Livable Oakville plan has rewritten what that looks like, which results in 3 commercial zones plus a 4th one related to a policy issue and service stations, and 4 employment zones implementing each of the designations. This results in a range of use permissions within each zone that corresponds to the livable Oakville plan framework as it exists today. And depending on which zone you are in, would guide the types of uses that are received. There are a few submissions in the correspondence package that was submitted tonight related to this issue in particular in the employment zones, and there may be public delegations on it as well. So on the consultation exercise, one of the joys of me being able to be a part of this team and working in-house is having the pleasure of being able to undertake such a significant consultation exercise. We have, as a project team, have done 25 of our All About Zoning workshops to groups of varying interest and experience in zoning, starting at very high level why we do this, going into very particular nitty-gritty details. We've had 456 attendees so far. We anticipate that number will go up at our 26th workshop scheduled in Bronte Village next week. We have facilitated 21 open houses, over 3 rounds of consultation thus far, with an additional 164 attendees at those events. We are meeting one-on-one with property owners. We are receiving public comments in writing, documenting those to be able to present to council, reporting back with a reply to the submitter, and B, the reply being made to your, being provided to you for your review. It was 104 at noon. I can tell you that's higher based on what my email looked like at 5 o'clock. Adding in our various telephone counter inquiries that we're not necessarily that diligent in tracking, I think it's safe to estimate that we've had over 800 individuals participate in the InZone project to date, trying to factor out repeat contacts at that point. With repeat contacts, we are well over 1,000. Excellent. It looks pretty good on screen. I'm not sure how it looks on your individual monitors, Council, but these presentations have included, the All About Zoning presentations have been particularly popular with residents associations. The residents associations are shown on screen that we have met with, covering a pretty significant proportion of our residential areas in Oakville, plus 2 BIAs, downtown Oakville in September, Bronte BIA coming up. And there are a number of future revisions that staff have already proposed making in the final draft of the bylaw itself. You will notice many of these mentioned in the consultation packages that have been submitted to you, both in the original November 4 report and in today's walk-on item, where comments have been made by members of the public asking for clarification or reconsideration on certain items. Without going into too much detail and showing them on screen, I think it's fair to say that that public comment has been very valued on this project, in particular over the last couple of months, with the official second draft and, for lack of a better term, official public consultation beginning from a statutory perspective. Some items that I should point on this slide, in particular as they relate to office employment, is that industrial use, which is proposed to be renamed manufacturing, and wholesaling and distribution are proposed to be added as permitted uses in that zone, subject to a maximum 50% floor area of all buildings on the lot and within a multi-premises building, in an attempt to accommodate many existing, I'll call them industrial plazas for lack of a better word, where the uses are operating with minimal issues today. In the business employment zone, we are additionally proposing to permit outside storage as a permitted use, outside of many of these particular lots in this zone having the use already today. The 15% area coverage maintains it as a very small accessory feature on that lot for compatibility purposes. Daycares are proposed to be deleted as a permitted use in that zone upon review of licenses already issued. We didn't find any legal existing uses in that zone. There are environmental concerns with the introduction of a sensitive land use, such as daycares, within that particular zone itself. A place of worship permission is also proposed to be added as a permitted use, subject to similar floor area maximums in the business commercial E4 zone. And in community use zones, clarifying a bit of a minor technical issue where a place of worship has a daycare or a private school accessory to it. While many of our places of worship do not meet the road location requirements that would exist to a primary use, but these uses are generally internal to existing buildings and are a very minor component of the activity on site. We're also looking at a number of technical revisions to special provisions based on a further review of technical comments. some minor issues associated with administration and interpretation with all the various other conversions that we're looking at, new definitions, new use terminology, and some minor mapping edits that have come up as well. As one point that I should seize upon here, Your Worship, with respect to the third point, where applications are in process for a zoning bylaw amendment, the proposal as it's, the intent right now would be for decisions when we have two bylaws in force, that the amendments that are brought forward to council for your consideration would accommodate both bylaws. So we would be looking at an amendment to 1984-63 and an amendment to 2014 during this transition period. With minor variances, we'll have to do the same sort of authorship at the same time, the same sort of authorship, and careful consideration. So there's still a lot of work left to be done, as much as this is a particularly great milestone to be hitting as a project team. The Midtown strategy work, as discussed, is anticipated to be completed early in 2014 and will move through its own public process in order to conclude that work. The Urban Design Manual or Livable by Design project should largely be complete next year as well. It is anticipated and contemplated in the Livable Oakville Plan today that an amendment will be required to complete that work. A zoning bylaw amendment, if recommended, would come forward at the same time. That separate public process, again, allows for us to focus on those issues in particular and deal with very particular and detail-oriented comments associated with these very particular and detail-oriented issues. We are also working to set up a workshop with landowners in the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District, representing to previously mentioned outstanding council item to try and rationalize the overall zoning framework in that particular neighborhood. We got most of the work done, but there's still a little bit left to do. My understanding is that a December date will probably work for the group. And as always, we continue to respond to public input. Just because the letter isn't into us today doesn't mean that staff won't consider it and review it in the context of this project. Any stakeholder group that's reasonably organized enough is more than happy to request an all-about zoning workshop. We're doing our one-on-one meetings. The requests are coming in fast and furiously all of a sudden. And we are continuing to review and monitor other issues in the project as they make their way through council. One more in-zone subcommittee meeting is to be forecasted, and I have neglected to tell clerks, so surprise, Ms. Titanic, and we will be beginning our implementation projects on the back end of this project at the same time. So the recommendation before you tonight, which I couldn't say any better than what Ms. Anderson provided, is that comments be received. Staff can take those back, deliberate upon them, and we'll provide a further staff report. And the transition policies in particular, as they are worded, do have an implication on applications that are in process. There are, therefore, I think I would strongly recommend advising the public that we are targeting a date of passage for this bylaw of February the 10th, 2014. And with that, staff, thank you for listening, and staff are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Robinson?
Your Worship,
Your
Worship, I have a point of privilege to ask you that I would like to declare a pecuniary interest in the second item, because in the correspondence that we've just received tonight, there are letters from my wife's employer, which I wasn't aware of until just this evening. So on that basis, until I've got a better understanding, I'd like to excuse myself from the discussion of the second item.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, I would like to ask maybe Mr. Nethery or Ms. Close, it doesn't matter to me, a little bit of information about the notification process, the legislative notification process, that which is required. Could you please explain what it is and how you handle that?
Through Your Worship, I can answer that. The regulation number escapes me. I want to say 54506 under the Planning Act specify, I got a thumbs up from our solicitor, all right. Section 5 of that particular regulation specifies the means for notice to be issued. It gives the option to municipalities to issue either through a direct mail out to immediately affected landowners, which is our very common practice for development applications themselves, or through the posting of a notice, advertisement, in a newspaper of sufficient circulation within the geographic area of the municipality being affected by this. To that effect, staff recommended the latter and posted an advertisement on October the 9th, a full-page ad in the Oakville Beaver. It was reprinted on October the 16th. The talking point we've been using behind the scenes is the issue of bonus notice, and the bonus notice went out to a number of landowners who met one of 6 criteria as outlined in a previous staff report. A mail out went to those, and Mr. Hannum can nod his head in agreement, over between 300 and 400 additional respondents.
Well, thank you so far, Mr. Nethery. However, in my involvement with this particular subject, there's been a number of people express concerns about A, they don't read the newspaper, and B, they don't live in Oakville, so they don't even get the newspaper. You and I have discussed a week ago, I think you used the term dedicated mailings, and that there's between 45 and 50,000 commercial properties in Oakville.
Through your worship, there's 50,000 properties that we, and which include road parcels, that are covered by the scope of the in-zone project in its entirety. This would include residential, institutional, employment, parks, and the like. I do not have an estimate off the top of my head how many commercial properties we have.
So based on those numbers and the cost of postage today, you told me that you thought an overall dedicated mailing to every individual registered owner explaining in detail what this was all about would run the taxpayers of Oakville about $50,000.
Through your worship, and I invite Ms. Anderson to tag in to clarify my response, there is no way we would be able to issue a very basic notice at $50,000 conservative estimate about, and I shouldn't even say notice, a very conservative 1 to 2 page flyer at most with respect to this project. A detailed, well, you see the I assume everyone sees the binders I'm normally toting around, which is the detailed explanation of the entirety of the process. To go much beyond that, I can't even begin to forecast what the costs would be.
Therefore, based on my previous comments about many people feeling that they weren't adequately notified for whatever reason, should we be expanding our dedicated notification in certain instances such as this? I'm not talking about every single application that the planning department gets, but something like this. Should we be looking into the possibility of telling them more effectively what's happening in their town?
Through your worship, staff are always looking at innovative ways to try and improve our outreach on this project, or on all of our projects. I don't want to just single out in-zone. To that extent, we have a 300-person, well, as of this today, a 300-person strong project mailing list. About 275 of those are email-oriented, and we only get about 5 bounce backs per time. We've been maintaining a project website. We've had social media communications as well. Are all about zoning workshops, which we've had tremendous success, particularly because the councilors, members of council have done a great job of connecting us to these individuals. We've also had a lot of incidental help from various realtors, solicitors, other private stakeholders in the town who have been trying to notify people and make people aware of this project and the changes coming down. I would submit to council that this is it's a pretty significant consultation exercise that has been undertaken, and we are doing a dedicated mail out to members of the Bronte Village BIA at a request of the Bronte Village BIA of 70. I believe that list is about 75. I see Ms. Anderson. To add.
I just wanted, through your worship to Councillor Robinson, to reiterate the importance of the consultation we've undertaken and notifying individuals. As Mr. Nethery indicated, there are individuals who did receive dedicated notice on their specific property if they met criteria. If we were removing rights or significantly changing those rights, they were notified of that. So there were individual property owners who were advised of specific changes. Through groups such as the residents associations, the BIAs, the chamber, and numerous others, we have sought outreach to individuals who have interest in their community. And also through the in-zone subcommittee and through members of council, we have continued to request notification through various publications that you are privy to that go out to your constituents. We've also, under our public consultation work that we do at the town, engaged very much an educational component and a consultation component through social media and through access to our website. So I do believe that we provide more than sufficient notification, and as Mr. Nethery indicated, that as individuals come forward with concerns and questions and inquiries, we have gone over and above to address those and ensure those individuals continue to be notified of the process.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson, thank you, Mr. Nethery. You heard my comments, and one final question. You went through your very eloquent procedure and presentation covering in much detail everything that's before us, but you didn't mention bonusing. Do you want to comment on why bonusing is mentioned in the official plan and yet not in the draft zoning bylaw?
I would love to, Your Worship, but I believe Ms. Anderson or Ms. Childs are probably better to speak to this policy issue.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Robinson, bonusing policies are provided in the Livable Oakville plan. And the plan, as council has approved, provides for the opportunities for additional height and density through the Section 37 of the Planning Act, and sets out some areas where that bonusing can be addressed without the need for an official plan amendment. So in the growth areas, there are areas which we refer to as eligible for bonusing. So we set a height limit, and we say that these areas are eligible for additional height without the need to amend the OP. But that does require a change to the zoning bylaw, and the implementation of that is set out in policies in the official plan. The zoning bylaw, as a result, cannot zone for that maximum height, or we preclude the opportunity to get any public benefit. The ideal is that you have the maximum amount allowed under the zoning, which triggers the need for a zoning amendment, which then allows us to go through the process of the Section 37. So we achieve that additional amount of height and or density that may be otherwise identified in the plan through the zoning process. And I believe in previous reports to the in-zone subcommittee and likely somewhere in the reports to council, that particular issue was addressed. And so we'd be more than happy to highlight that in the report going forward.
Thank you very much to everyone, and fine work to this point. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Anyone else? Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually have some specific questions about the bylaw. Would this be the appropriate time to ask our staff, or? Okay. If I can ask, I guess one of the questions that comes to my mind is about rooftop terraces. Is our intention to do away or to significantly minimize such structures? The reason I ask, if I can ask you to turn to page 4.12, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, just let me know when you're there.
Through Your Worship, I'm ready, but.
Okay, so regulation 4.21 C, rooftop terraces shall have a maximum floor level height of 3 meters on any lot in or abutting a residential zone. So what does that mean? Does that mean that any apartment or a condo or any mid-rise is no longer now allowed to have a rooftop terrace?
Through you, Your Worship, as I read the regulation, if the lot is in a residential zone or it is abutting a residential zone, which could include a mixed-use zone, if the rooftop feature is more than 3 meters above surrounding grade, it would not be permitted. It could be considered through a planning application.
No, I understand it could be considered through a planning application, but basically, this provision precludes any condominium apartment for having a rooftop. Was that the intent, or is that a mistake or something that needs to be looked at or reviewed?
Through your worship, I think this would be good feedback for the project team for us to take back and deliberate upon.
Because when I read that, I just thought that was a little strange, so I'll look forward to a report on that. Just a few more questions if you can.
Of course.
Actually, if I can ask you to turn to the definition section, page 3.13. Okay, under lot coverage, you use the term total horizontal area, which is that area covered by all roof structures and buildings above ground level. What do you mean by total horizontal areas? Because the way I read it, it could be interpreted two ways. One, it could be the lot coverage, or it could be the lot coverage of every single level in that dwelling. How does our staff, what's the intent of our staff with this definition?
I was listening, Your Worship. I was double checking the current definition of lot area in 1984-63, and total horizontal area is language that's in the bylaw today. The interpretation of of lot coverage regulations is to pretend that the lot is a two-dimensional plane. The amount of that is covered by buildings, irrespective of their height or the floor areas attached to them, the amount of building that's covering the lot from a plan view would be the lot coverage.
So in essence, if it was just one level, it would be the lot coverage. And if it was 10 levels, it wouldn't be 10 times that.
I think I heard that correctly, Your Worship. Yes, it would just be, regardless of the height, it's the one metric.
Just to avoid the ambiguity, why did we take out the definition of total horizontal area in the new bylaw?
If I can get it, clear.
It'd be advisable to put that definition back in.
Through Your Worship, the term total horizontal area is not defined today. It is just, it's been interpreted this way for a very long time here. As I read the definition, I believe it's robust enough to make that clear. But I'm happy to staff would be happy to include some interpretive side notes on the side to perhaps explain this a little better.
I'd appreciate that. You can just review that and come back. I do have a few more questions. I want to speak to you a little bit about accessory buildings and structures. That's on page 6.13. Let me know when you get there as well, please.
I am ready, Your Worship.
I looked at two different sections when I was reading this. Is the intent to allow either a garage and no other accessory unit? Because when you read the regulations which deal with accessory units, in particular 6.5.2C, and it talks about lot coverage, and it says that it has to be lesser than 5% of the lot area or 42 square meters, okay? And then when you look at the regulations with respect to private garages, it says that it can be a maximum of 56 square meters. So it's almost one or the other. If you read these two sections together, you can have a garage, but you can't have a shed, or you can't have a pool house, or anything else like that. Again, am I reading that incorrectly, or is this something that staff needs to review?
I should offer one quick clarification, Your Worship, based on feedback received at our drop-in open house just now, that the lesser of 5% or 42 square meters, I believe is a typo on our part, that it's actually supposed to be the greater of 5% or 42 square meters, being 500 square feet on smaller lots. With respect to the actual question, the intent of, if the options we are debating is a garage or an ordinary shed or a gazebo, I would submit that the interpretation is a detached garage or a particular gazebo. If the garage is attached to the main building, staff would be interpreting that to be a constituent part of the main building and part of that main lot coverage itself. So you would have, well, to relate back to the diagram they had on the screen, we'd have a house, an attached garage at whatever lot coverage it happens to have in that zone, plus an additional 5%, which is for larger lots, 42 square meters for smaller lots, which could be a gazebo, a garden shed, a second garage. Although a second garage may require a planning permission, now that I think about it.
Mr. Nandek, I think you appreciate that there is a great deal of confusion because of these two sections. Can I take it that the staff will come back with further clarification on this as well?
Through your worship, we can do that.
Turning to page 611, I want to talk about maximum lot coverage. Sorry, I had all these tabbed before, so I don't know. The graph, the table that you have at 6.4.1, it talks about maximum lot coverage. And it sets out for, single story and multiple story structures. For multiple stories, when you're looking at the lot coverage, are you referring to the main building? Because you use that term main building when you're dealing with single stories, but you either mistakenly or advertently took it out when you're referring to multiple story built structures.
Through your worship, the intent is for 6.4.1 to apply to the main building.
Okay,
in
so
both scenarios.
When you're dealing with single stories, you actually have the word main building in there. And it's not in this section, but if I can, let me see where I have found it. Right. On page 6.3. Are you with me in table 6.3.1? It says maximum lot coverage for the main building. So it actually has those words in there, and they've been taken out when you deal with multiple. Can you put those words back in?
Your worship, I see what Councillor Khan is talking about, and yes, this is an issue that staff have identified. It will be rectified in the final draft. The rectification is that in all of the 6.3 tables, you would see maximum lot coverage for the main building repeated throughout. And it should probably be in the 6.4.1 too.
Thank you for that. I guess my last question is probably more substantive. The other questions that I've asked, I have to deal with, with perhaps mistakes in the drafting of the document. But this deals with our transitional bylaws. Can you go back to that the chart that you had up, or the two sections two criteria that you have in the transitional bylaws?
That would be this slide,
Yeah,
really?
that
Okay.
one, thank you. Okay, so I'm looking at the second one right now, where there's an authorized minus a variance or conditional or final site plan approved after the date that our official, is that the date, May 10 was the official plan was approved?
Through your worship, that is correct.
Okay. So why have we picked, or why has staff picked that as a trigger? And the reason I say this is because I've received a lot of calls from different residences who said that they moved into a particular area knowing what the bylaw was at the time. And, they've invested some money, maybe they paid a premium for the lot because they wanted to build a particular type of house on it. Why is it not when you have a completed application? Why is it then when there is an approved order of committee of adjustments or whatever it might be? And the reason I say that is that by that time, they've hired an architect, they have drawings, they've bought the property, they might have a variance application, they'd have to consult with their neighbors. So there's a lot of time invested, there's a lot of resources invested. And then for us to say, sorry, there's a no-go on this. Why not allow the completed application to be the trigger?
Through you, your worship, this is an issue that many other, all municipalities are beginning to grapple with. It's emergent in zoning bylaws itself. And the reason that staff's recommendation is worded as it is today is primarily because we have a zoning framework under 1984-63 that does not conform to the livable Oakville plan itself. There are applications. I'm struggling to think of one that is in process right now. Too many details going on in my head, but there are certainly other applications that staff are aware of potentially coming in and floating around that are not compliant with, that would not be compliant with the livable Oakville plan. Based on the experience, and I'm speaking about things that happened before my time here, but when the livable Oakville plan itself was approved, and a number of applications were filed that, generally speaking, would not have conformed to the livable Oakville plan as it exists today. This recommendation, as staff have worded it at this time, does prevent that scenario from potentially happening, on the understanding that there are other applications in process that may be necessarily conforming, and staff are monitoring their progress through the applications process in order to identify if any tweaks, changes, revisions to this bylaw are required. I think it's also fair to say that there are a number of submissions in the consultation package before you tonight that speak to this issue as well, Council.
Yeah, so is this something that staff will go back and consider whether or not they want to change the trigger date, or staff have taken a firm position on this? And the reason I say this, there's an issue of fairness here. Like I said, people have invested money and time, and I don't see, and I appreciate that we have to have, because of our official plan, we have to have our new zoning in place. But if there's no real prejudice to the town by allowing those applications that have already been submitted, for that to be the trigger, why not allow fairness to prevail?
Through your worship, strictly based on the volume of comments that we've received on this so far on the project, I think it is an issue that staff are willing to take a second look at. Back to our stock talking point, everything that usually showed up in previous presentation slides, everything is under review, everything is potentially subject to change, and I should probably tap out for Ms. Anderson at this point.
Through your worship to Councillor Khan, I do believe that staff at this stage have addressed the prejudice to the town related to this matter, and it's our position at this point that the prejudice is would be increasing the amount of time of which we do not have conformity with livable Oakville, and we believe that the 2-year time frame is sufficient, and expanding that we would have to look at it, but at this point in time that is the position coming forward, but we will take that comment into consideration.
Sorry, so you're saying that the 2-year time that we have 3 years to enact a bylaw. Can we not enact a bylaw and still have a flexible transitional bylaw?
We can, and I believe, as I said, I think this does provide flexibility for those applications that are completed. The enactment of the bylaw comes into play at the date that it was approved. Yep. So that's the other issue that we're dealing with here, is that it may be sometime in the future after potential appeals that the bylaw is actually final approved, but its enactment date comes back. And so based on that, we feel that the 2 years is sufficient. I do believe that the 3 years is from the date when livable Oakville was approved. So we are nearing that time frame and hoping to move forward and have as much conformity as possible within the shortest period of time that also provides for adequate fairness.
But I'm not advocating to extend the 2 years. I'm just saying the trigger should be different.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and given the timeframes for planning applications, we'll come back and report on that.
So just to be clear though, Councillor, I don't think it would be proper, and I haven't heard staff give you an undertaking that they will change that. And they have identified that there is prejudice to the town in their mind, and this is not a one-sided question of fairness, and there are other issues that bear on this. So let's leave it to staff and see what they come back with.
you. I look forward for a report coming back from staff and then a healthy debate at this council.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Demoff.
Thank you for all your work on this. You're someone who can make zoning sound exciting, which is quite an accomplishment. So the mayor and Councillor Duddick and I were recently at a residents association meeting, and one of the concerns that came up was to do, and I think you've had a couple of emails since then, had to do with the lot coverage. And I know you've experienced this at your open houses and meetings, that feelings are very strong on both sides of that, where some people don't want any increase at all from what the house is already there, and some people want to be able to build to the maximum. But one of the concerns that came up had to do where you've got an area or a street where almost all the houses have already been built with McMansions, and you might have one little house left in the middle. And the concern is that we're prejudicing their property value because now they're not allowed to build to the same. And I'm just wondering, is that something that we can, I know you don't want to get into special provisions for individual lots, and that's what you're trying to get away from, but I'm wondering how, if you've looked at that, or if that's something that can be considered as we go forward, because I know you've had a couple of comments on that and trying to balance both sides.
Through your worship, to touch on the first point, thank you for the compliment, but it's only exciting because we have a really great team working on this project. With respect to the question itself, many, I will use the term replacement houses, have been built over recent years compliant with the floor area lot ratio and lot coverage standards of bylaw 1984-63 as amended, particularly in 1989-1990. The lot coverage modeling that has been undertaken by staff is based upon the floor area lot ratios that exist today. Those standards were used to determine these figures. If the question is, are we taking away area of a house, I would submit that when the math is undertaken for potential houses that could be built, the floor areas themselves remain the same. In some areas, they could even be a little bigger. We've received comments. I think it's fair to say that Councillor Demoff has summarized the issue quite well. We are receiving feedback from both sides. It is fair to say that this is an issue that staff will be, well, in order to respond to all of these questions, is something that staff is willing to take feedback upon and report back to council if there are any recommendations to the framework. I hope that answers the question.
It does, and thank you. And I think maybe there's a misunderstanding in terms of what is being allowed under the new zoning versus, as you've explained it now, versus a perception that we are taking something away. So maybe that's something that we can try and clarify with people, and perhaps it might be necessary to have another one of your all about zoning workshops with a group of residents who do have that concern. So thank you.
Your worship, staff are happy to go out and repeat an all about zoning workshop with anybody who has already had one to date. It's certainly not a one and done sort of program.
Perhaps when you do, you could, if you don't already have them, you could do additional examples, including, say, an orphan house on a redeveloping street to demonstrate what the impact would be. And maybe that would clear things up. Okay, thank you. Other questions? Madam Clerk, I see no other questions from council, and I'll ask you to call the first registered delegation.
First delegation is Kevin Brown, representing Tank Mart International.
Mr. Brown? Mr. Brown does not answer the call. Madam Clerk.
Okay, the next delegation is Mr. Glenn Wellings of Wellings Planning Consultants, representing several clients.
Mr. Welling, welcome. We look forward to your information.
Your Worship, council members, town staff. For the record, my name is Glenn Wellings. I am planning consultant. I'm here tonight on behalf of 3 individual clients, and I'll be quick. First of all, client number 1, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, 112 Ulster Drive. Their request is simple, that they would like the recent OMB decision affecting their property back in July to be fully recognized under the new zoning bylaw. and that would include all provisions under the RO3 zone that currently exists today. And it's my opinion this can be accomplished through site-specific recognition in the new zoning bylaw. The current staff position, or the written submission back to the Browns, is a little bit concerning. We have meetings scheduled with staff toward the end of the month, and hopefully we can discuss and resolve this matter. Client number 2, Standard Life. We've recently been retained to look at 3 properties currently owned by Standard Life. They own properties and buildings at 2816 Bristol Circle, 2160 Buckingham Road, both properties in Winston Park, and the third property at 871 Equestrian Court, which is in the vicinity of South Service Road and QEW. And what we're doing is, for Standard Life, is we're currently evaluating the existing tenancy of those buildings in relation to the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw. And I think generally the review so far so good. We just need to confirm a few more things with our client. We're happy to see that they have the official plan amendment does reinsert office uses within the industrial designation for the property at 2160 Buckingham Road. So that is positive in my client's mind. We will, Your Worship, relay any further concerns to town staff. I'm hoping there are not any, but I have a few questions of my client I need to ask. Client number 3, EDEV Inc. EDEV currently has a property at 700 Third Line under contract. And that's a property some councillors may recall, former Penwalt property, now Arkema. And it's situated at the southwest corner of Third Line and Wycroft. And I've met with both councillors Robinson and Johnston on this property, as well as town staff on a few occasions. We've pre-consulted with town staff, and my client would like to develop the site for office use, for a site storage facility adjacent to the railway, and also supporting service commercial uses, which would include both a financial institution and 2 restaurant pads. The site is well positioned. It's right beside the GO train station, the Bronny GO station, and in close proximity to the QEW. The proposed development concept proposed by my client is currently permitted under the current zoning affecting the property, but there are several concerns with respect to the new zoning bylaw. We do support the reintroduction of office uses through the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw, but we believe these documents need to go further to deal with the redevelopment of these lands. Office users that have been canvassed by my clients are not interested in locating office uses directly abutting the railway line due to the limited visibility and exposure. However, they are interested in the peripheral frontages of Third Line and Wycroft. But today, many office users do demand service commercial uses in close proximity or within walking distance. And that's something that is not available for this site, and hence the rationale behind the restaurant and financial institutional proposal. Employers would like their employees to be able to walk to these uses rather than having them get into their cars and travel during their lunch hours or after hours. So that is a rationale behind the current concept. Simply put, if the current zoning does come into effect, my client has no interest in this property. And I think as a planner that would be a shame. I believe there is a high quality proposal on the table. And this is not an easy site to redevelop. There is significant demolition expenses, a significant remediation costs due to the previous industrial use of the property. So 2 options I would like to pursue with both town staff and council. The preference would be that the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw recognize the contemplated use of the property, or contemplated development of the property, pardon me, and the uniqueness of the site in close proximity to the GO train station, pardon me. And that would be, to me, the best solution, Your Worship. As an alternative, an appropriate transitional clause could be included in the zoning bylaw. And I think Councillor Khan did indicate his concern with the transitional requirements. It's a concern to my client as well. Simply put, if they decide to close on this property and end up purchasing the lands, in order to file a site plan application, have that site plan application in process, and all of a sudden a new zoning bylaw comes into effect, that would basically negate many of the proposed uses on that site plan. It's a terrible risk. It's a risk that's simply not good business, and we would like to work further with staff on the transitional clauses. We think there are some solutions. I do have examples from other municipalities that could be helpful. Third option, I suppose, Your Worship and councillors, could be to leave the current zoning as is. And I think that is an option that could also be explored. In conclusion, Your Worship, we'll clearly work very diligently with your staff as well as council to address what I feel is a pretty important matter affecting this property. So in conclusion, Your Worship, I would like to thank town staff, actually, and Mr. Nethery. He's been very responsive to all my questions, concerns. With respect to the notice, I found the notice to be quite good in terms of receiving notification emails and things like that. And I've dealt with many municipalities throughout Ontario dealing with new official plans and zoning bylaws, so I have found the notification to be quite good. So I'm pleased to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you for your information, sir. There are no questions. Madam
Thank you.
Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is listed to speak to item 1 and 2, and that is Mr. John Vale.
Mr. Vale is here. Welcome, Mr. Vale. We look forward to your information.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and to the clerk. My comments will be on the official plan amendment and on the zoning bylaw related to employment in Oakville. Now, we have a situation here in town that is sort of cumulative over the last 40 years, and that is essentially that when I was in high school here, we had a 60-40 split on our tax assessment between residential and commercial industrial. Through all the various planning processes that have happened over the last 35 or so years, we're now at approximately 87% residential and 13% commercial industrial. Now, we don't use the word commercial industrial or the word industrial in the Oakville dictionary anymore. We call it employment. So let's say employment. I apologize for using the word industrial. The problem is that I don't think any of us would consider that to be balanced in the sense that live-work opportunities are both enjoyed by the citizens of Oakville. So what we have here is, quite frankly, a little bit of, and I caution myself in being too strong in saying what I have noticed happen here over the last while on zoning. And I have attended most of the open houses, etc. I have been ad nauseum. Staff sort of rolls their eyes when they see me arrive again. Nice to see, John, nice to see you. Why are you here? Kind of thing is more what happens to me lately. But seriously, I would ask council, and I appreciate that this is a statutory public meeting that isn't making a decision tonight, so that there is an opportunity to discuss it. And on purpose, I didn't want to write to you before I heard the presentations. But there is a technical paper in your material that staff has prepared on the employment changes between the existing and the new to be in conformity with livable Oakville. So what they did is they put approximately 250 use permissions onto a chart and explained old, new, and this was as of the 2nd of October. Now, we know it's a living document. We've seen other material come tonight in print that changes that a little bit. I've seen slides that change the printed matter that came out for tonight's meeting. So, but the bottom line is, out of those 250 or so use permissions of employment, about 50 of those out of the 250 would no longer be permitted. And that's their analysis of their own OPA and bylaw, not mine. So I didn't actually have to do the homework. It was done for me, which I appreciate. So what has come along through this whole process has been, well, we believe in livable Oakville and all of this is great, but use permissions that were formerly around in terms of employment are no longer allowed, but because there's so many of them that would not be allowed, so we put an OPA into, okay, now we're going to allow that. So my suggestion would be that that list of 50 items, now 50 items out of 250 use permissions now no longer being allowed is, I can translate that roughly into, and Councillor Robinson asked the question of how many businesses we have. We have approximately 5,000 businesses, 5,000 plus businesses in town. We have approximately 1,300 street addresses or buildings that house those 5 or 5,500 businesses. So if you take 20% of the use permissions out of 5,000 businesses, do the math, and you might affect 1,000 businesses. So those 1,000 businesses employ how many people? And it just goes on and on and on. So I think there's a bit of a public relations issue here with all of us who want to promote the economic development of Oakville, Ontario, that is a problem from a PR point of view that, by the way, what we gave you maybe decades ago, please come to Oakville, please build a business in Oakville, all of a sudden, well, it doesn't meet our criteria today. So therefore, we suggest that you better get up to the microphone or we'll take it away from you, or something like that. So I'm very concerned. I'm glad to see the staff working on diminishing the list of the numbers of uses that are not permitted under the new OPA/zoning bylaw. I'm seeing it shrinking, and I would seriously ask all of you, most of whom I know personally, to please ask staff to continue to whittle down that list so that the uses in our employment areas will be permitted on an ongoing basis and not taken away from the businesses that are right now employing people in Oakville. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vail. I think maybe you would benefit from a question I might ask staff.
Thanks.
Ms. Anderson, would you like to answer or delegate, and maybe you can clear up the confusion?
Through your worship, without getting into details, the reduction in the number of uses in the table is due in part to, I would say, two key changes. One is in relation to livable Oakville and redefining the implementation of those areas. So where you have a industrial area that is now being zoned industrial, or I should say business commercial, you may have a change in the zoning to implement the official plan. So there may be some uses that are no longer permitted, and where those uses are now no longer permitted, in many cases there are site-specific provisions to allow them to continue as a legal use, or they're being made legal non-conforming. So there is in fact that element. But substantially, the change in the chart from, say, 250 or 50 of those being removed is basically a consolidation where in the previous bylaw, we may have had a list of I'll give an example, 20 activities that relate to retail sales. So you would have had a list of 20 types of uses that in essence are a retail store, or a number of uses that are in fact a service commercial use. So rather than continue with 20 individualized specific uses, we are now referring to retail store, and all of those previously permitted uses are now consolidated by one defined term. And that's the substantial change in the reduction.
And I've just one follow-up. Because of that consolidation and that simplification of the definition, are you in fact allowing additional uses that not previously considered?
Absolutely, Your Worship. The intent is to provide for that ability for a use that may have otherwise not been specifically defined to be considered as the retail use, as an example.
So I hope, Mr. Vail, that this sets your mind somewhat at ease or reduces somewhat your anxiety about this point. Staff will, of course, continue to look carefully at this, but their intent is not to take these away, but rather, in fact, to increase opportunity.
I hope so, Your Worship. If I may, through the balance of the consultation process, which I understand is ending in the new year, provide some specific examples, and then perhaps they can deal with them.
Yes, certainly. To your opening point about the ratio of 60-40 and so on, I think it's important there to understand that over the last 30 years, hundreds and hundreds of hectares of employment land were converted by previous councils to residential use. And it's there you need to look for the major shift from 60-40 to 80-20 or whatever it will be. You can't take gigantic portions of your employment land and convert them into residential and not change your ratio.
Exactly.
This official plan has put in place strong safeguards which should, as long as they exist, prevent any future raiding of our employment lands. So thanks very much for coming.
Appreciate that.
Okay. Councillor Elgar.
Now, I think it should be noted that it has been Mr. Vail that has come out for a number of years speaking against the flipping of employment to residential. He's been like the lone voice out there in Oakville, so I think he has to be complimented for doing that. Thank you.
Well, write that down, that Oakville Town Council just complimented me in some way, so thank you for that.
Hopefully you'll leave happier. Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please.
Next delegation is speaking to item 2, Brian Page, representing Moloch North America.
I'll even say that on mic. Welcome, Mr. Page.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. I'm Brian Page. I'm Vice President of Municipal Affairs for Moloch North America. We're a waste and recycling.
Mr. Page, you have a wonderful voice and you're projecting very well. I can hear you perfectly, but I doubt anyone else can.
I'm sorry.
Wonderful. That's much better.
Okay. My name is Brian Page, and I'm Vice President of Municipal Affairs for Moloch North America. I will note that I was the Supervisor of Site Development for the City of Kitchener up until the end of 2011, where I had the honor of working with Joe as well, with the City of Kitchener as well. So we trained him well, I can see, because he's worked quite well with me. I've given you this brochure, and also contained in there is the Garbage Revolution. I can tell you that our product in the Kitchener-Waterloo area has gone from not being known to now 90% of all new development use it for their waste and recycling containment, and all the advantages are listed here why, and it's taken off quite well. And I appreciate working with Joe and Christine Tizard as well. Their customer service is impeccable. I work across Canada, and I compliment Oakville for its staff and their customer service, par none, for sure. And I'm glad to say that they have allowed our product to continue here or to be used in Oakville for all new zonings, is my understanding, when the final bylaw comes out as well. So I'm not going to use much time here. I just want to say thank you, and I hope you can read about the brochure and realize that it's probably going to change how you collect your garbage and waste recycling products, and how much more space and usefulness it'll make of your site plans. It did in Kitchener-Waterloo area as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the compliments, and thank you for Mr. Nethery.
Thank you. Good night.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is listed for item 2, Sam Ibrahim, Chair of the Economic Development Committee of the Bronte BIA.
Mr. Abraham. Welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Good afternoon, good evening, Your Worship, members of council. On behalf of the Bronte BIA, we are here to register our opposition to the in-zone draft zoning proposal for the Bronte Commercial Core. Now, back in 2011, the Bronte BIA made a request to the town through Councillor Robinson for assistance to develop an economic action plan to improve the business conditions for the area. I just want to note that we appreciate the support we've received from the town and are working to implement this plan and act upon its near-term recommendations. Our concern, however, is the need to build the right framework for a new and vibrant vision for the Bronte core that brings us here tonight. We've looked at the zoning proposals for downtown Oakville and Kerr Street, and we found that there was a lot of opportunities for growth and revitalization in those areas. The problem with the zoning for Bronte Road is that we're not classified as a central business district, but as a village. It doesn't seem we're on an equal footing with Kerr Street and downtown Oakville. And as a result, we're losing potential investment to other areas of the GTA and other areas of Oakville. With regard to the economic action plan, we're chipping away at the incremental projects, but nothing that is going to generate the revitalization that Bronte needs to survive and thrive. We ask council to review the proposal and level the playing field for Bronte. We wish to invite all councilors on November 13th at the Walton United Church at noon for a meeting between the town planners and the commercial property owners of the Bronte area. We're asking for fair consideration from all members of council prior to this plan going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abraham. Are there questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next delegation, please.
Next delegation is listed for item 2, Dr. Murray Hazard.
Dr. Hazard. Dr. Hazard. Not here. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is listed for item 2, Anna or Robert Gardner.
Mr. Gardner, welcome.
Your Worship, my name is Robert Gardner, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. Hopefully my wife. We had an argument today. She may not want me to speak on her behalf. That's what happens when a Scotsman marries an Italian.
This could be what we call TMI.
That's right. Yes, that's right. I may pay for those comments. I just want to say that my wife and I, Italian, Scottish, came to this country. We're immigrants, and we chose, when we were married, to come to Oakville. It was a decision that I have never regretted. I believe my wife would concur with that. We chose to invest in the town, and we did that both commercially and residentially. And as two young people, we had many dreams, and some of those have been realized. What I feel is happening a little bit from my perspective when I look at my colleagues who have also invested in small properties is that they share certain characteristics. They're good people, they're hardworking people. I wouldn't describe them as being wealthy. I think they're highly involved in their lives with their family and so forth. And they're trying to make a return, which is a decent thing, I suppose, on their investment, which they made many, many years ago. And it becomes more and more difficult as time goes by because there are two pressure points. There's market value assessment, which I know has nothing to do with this group. There are taxes, there are demands, and there's Bronte, the beautiful Bronte, as we say now. It never really has taken off. It, for some strange reason, despite all of the blessings that it has geographically, visually, it hasn't flown. Probably some of the worst investments I've ever made in my life have been made in Bronte. I don't regret it. I don't think my wife does either. But at the same time, it's very difficult. And what I wanted to present to you tonight was to ask for a sensitivity towards owners and proprietors and people who are struggling to make ends meet in that part of the town. Because as costs go up, we can't ask people for exorbitant rents. They just won't come. And so a property will stand empty, and of course that doesn't do anyone any good. It occurs to me, and I've lived much of my life in academe, that the town is very well run. I think brilliantly run. But it's become almost so professional that for people who are small stakeholders in the community are becoming increasingly intimidated. The presentation tonight, while quite wonderful, and the young man, I would like to compliment him, I don't know if anyone really knows what it all means. I think it would take a long time of study to really understand it. And I was particularly impressed with our counselor, Ralph Robinson, who does a wonderful job, and for Mr. Khan for asking the questions that he did. Basically, the point I want to make is this. In the professionalism that is Oakville, the very high standards that you've applied to this community and made it, in my opinion, the most beautiful town I've ever lived in, do not forget the smaller stakeholder who may be, and I'll speak for myself, be somewhat unsophisticated because they do not have the resources to fight issues which may not be in their interests. They may not have the time to spend trying to understand the plans. The plans are created by people who are professionals, who make their livelihood, and are a large cadre of people. And at the other end is the user or the person who has to deal with those changes in a way which may be detrimental to decisions that they made some years ago as an investment. I was thinking that what gives Bronte its appeal and what gives Oakville its appeal is its particularity. It is my back shed, which is a little shop that is in Bronte. It is any number of little shops that have a lot of character and probably are getting by on a song in many instances. Every town has its large box stores. Every town has malls which look identical. We could all get in our car, leave the mall in Oakville, and drive 2,000 miles and end up in the same mall. What makes this town livable and beautiful to so many people is the small-scale entrepreneur who is giving his or her lifeblood to make something work. You've done such a wonderful job. I just want to ask you, don't forget my colleagues, the small stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Councillor Elder.
Yes, question for you, sir, if you don't mind. A few years ago, I came to council, the Burl Oak QEW area, which was all office employment. I only recall, I think it was like one person, and that happened to be Mr. John Vale, who came out and said it was the wrong thing to do to flip it from office to, I call it McJobs retail.
Yeah.
And yet, the majority of people from Bronte said they wanted it because they thought it would draw an awful lot more people down to downtown Bronte. I was wondering, has that worked? Because it wasn't unanimous, but a lot of people voted for it, but has that worked?
I don't think so, because I think that the development has been a bit of a mishmash. There's something about when you drive through Bronte that you feel that it's a work in progress that never quite arrived. You have isolated live-work units which are there. You have a mixture of small properties. The streetscape is not good. I think that people almost like Bronte because it's sort of an ugly duckling. I'm really amazed at the number of people that I meet now who say to me, we want to be here. We want to be in this town. I can understand it, but I think that the planning that has been applied to Bronte either has not been cohesive or it hasn't been followed through. I do believe, and I think my neighbors would feel the same way, we sort of feel we're the poor cousin. A lot of things are happening in other parts of the town which are quite wonderful and beautiful, and the people deserve it, I don't doubt that. But it seems that we get bypassed. Now, we have that beautiful harbor, but that's probably our main claim to fame right now.
So exactly what would you like to have happen that would change everything in downtown Bronte?
I think that there has to be a focused view of Bronte in a holistic way that takes into concern the particularity of some small stores, entrepreneurial and so forth, and help them. I think the town should be helping them to maximize their enterprise. And at the same time, I think there should be a look at how to achieve a visualization that makes Bronte live up to the rest of the town. When you drive along Lakeshore Road, which is a beautiful part of town, and you drive into Bronte, it's like some pressure goes out of the air. And then you pass it, and then you move on, and you start to approach the downtown core, and of course, one of the most beautiful downtowns anywhere in the world. Why Bronte has been left behind, I don't understand. I don't think it's for any want of trying on the part of the people who are there, but quite frankly, most of the entrepreneurs in Bronte are hurting. And I think what some of them may be afraid of, and I can't speak for them, and I don't want to do that, is that they look at this massive documentation coming down on them and wondering how it's going to help them. I think they're fearful that it's going to make some demands or changes which will in fact impede their effort to make a living, and that's what most of these people are doing. I think we have to be very careful that we're not answerable to the large stakeholders. They have the lawyers, they have the people who can take the time, and I don't deny or begrudge them that. But think of maybe your own mom and dad starting off a business, or you yourself starting off a business. It's very, very hard, and it's extremely difficult in Bronte.
So, Mr. Gardner, will you and your friends be able to attend the workshop that Mr. Nethery's putting on at Walton Church next week?
Yes, and I just want to say to you that I really respect what's going on tonight. The preparation I've heard from the councillors, yourself, your worship, and obviously you have a very capable staff. I think they have a national, if not international, reputation. I think that you can count on me being at more of these events and not just maybe making a critical comment about what has happened, but trying my best to help my colleagues and my colleagues here to do something for Bronte. It really deserves it. It really deserves it.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Duddick.
Thank you. Sorry.
Mr. Gardner, we're calling you
Mr.
back.
Gardner? Oh. Just one more.
Sorry. Council, I would caution you, we're not actually discussing either the OPA or the
No.
zoning matter that's before us. We're really talking economic development here, and it really begs another meeting another time. But Councillor Duddick?
Thank you. With that reminder, did you participate in the planning document that I know the town of Oakville rather went through for the Bronte area with the recognizing the struggles that you were indicating in your presentation and the fact that funds and time and energy was allocated towards that report? And it's, if I'm not mistaken, a part of this process that we're going through to make sure that everything is cohesive.
I have looked at the documentation that was on the internet and tried to come to grips with that. I haven't spent as much time as I should have, perhaps. My fear, I have a kind of a nagging fear that the process is so slick, and that's not the right word, it's so professional, it's so well thought out, it's so highly reasoned that it's almost intimidating. And if at the other end of this large organizational thrust with lots of enthusiasm and huge financial resources behind it is the little person who's running a business, it is difficult for them to come into that and try to modify it. As Councillor Robinson pointed out, the plan is already in place. Really what is happening now is to bring the bylaws into play. The one thing I would say, my recent experience with bylaws has not been a very happy one, and a little bit intimidating on my part, and I think on part of my wife. And I was thinking about that. If the interaction is that intimidating for me, someone who was a professor for 31 years, how intimidating is it going to be for somebody like my dad? I always think about my dad. He would have been hiding in his closet right now. And I think that I just want to make a promise to you that I'll try to keep up more with this and make my voice heard where it will be useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please.
The next delegation listed for item 2 is David Blois from Stonehaven Realty Management.
Mr. Blois?
Your Worship, just a point of privilege first, please.
Councillor?
I just asked Mr. Wellens to step out, and I just asked him a few questions. He made submissions before, and he was representing several different clients, and I asked him the name of his clients, and one was eDev Inc. And apparently eDev Inc. Had come to our law firm some time ago. I don't think they retained our law firm. I'm not a municipal lawyer, so I'm not in that area. I'm a litigator. I'm not sure, but Mr. Welling doesn't believe that any law firm was retained. But as a matter of overabundance, I will declare a pecuniary interest.
So you and Councillor Adams are pushed back from the table? You, under the best practices promulgated by Municipal Affairs, you're both entitled to leave.
This is fun.
Your Worship, I don't have an interest in item number 1, only item number 2.
You're welcome to stay. I only said that Municipal Affairs entitles you to leave. Mr. Blois, thank you for waiting while we dealt with the byplay.
Your Worship, Member of Council, my name is David Blois, and of Stonehaven Realty Management, and I am the director of 2 companies.
I'm very sorry for mangling your name.
Everybody does, don't worry. North Oakville Holdings is the owner of the property located at 1173 to 1195 North Service Road West, and Salville Holdings Limited is the owner of the property located immediately to the west. I'm here today to simply state my objections to the removal and restriction of industrial uses from the existing E1 designation. I've handed out a little pamphlet here just to indicate where the properties are located and what they're about. Both properties that you see on the aerial photographs in the package are predominantly designed for industrial use with a minority component of office. The In fact, of the 200,000 square feet of floor area located on both properties, the two-story office building located at 1175 North Service Road West represents only 19% of the total square footage, or 38,000 square feet. The balance of space is designed for light industrial uses with a component of administrative and business offices. Today, both properties are zoned E1, which permits light industrial operations, and both facilities have been developed to service the small business, industrial, and manufacturing needs of Oakville. 1173 to 1195 North Service Road has been servicing this need since 1987. 1215 North Service Road has been in operation since 2000. As it stands today, the area along the north side of the QEW West is proposed to remain an E1 employment zone. However, this new E1 zoning is now entitled Office Employment and was originally proposed to eliminate industrial uses or wholesaling and distribution. So you can see from those aerial photographs I provided, both of these buildings are designed for industrial uses. If passed as proposed, the current uses as operated by the small to mid-sized businesses will become legal non-conforming uses, and such uses will not be permitted to return in the future when current businesses vacate. In the past couple of weeks, I've been discussing this issue with Mr. Nethery. He has submitted our concerns to staff. As Mr. Nethery mentioned earlier, staff have replied with a recommendation to permit industrial uses, wholesaling, and distribution in the office employment zone. However, these two uses are proposed to be subject to size restrictions, as he mentioned earlier. The recommendations are to limit such uses to a maximum of 50% of the net floor area on the lot. Although we appreciate the flexibility shown by staff, the restriction to 50% of the floor area doesn't help us in either situation, especially at 1215 North Service Road West. For example, 1215 North Service Road West is an 81,000 square foot industrial building that houses two buildings, the Astound Group and GMD Distribution. The Astound Group designs and constructs media booths for large multinational companies for use in trade shows and is classified as industrial for realty tax purposes. As you know, IT class businesses pay approximately 60% higher taxes per square foot than commercially taxed businesses. This will all go away. GMD Distribution provides specialty distribution and wholesaling services to the pharmaceutical industry. However, regardless of the current uses, the dedicated floor area for industrial, wholesaling, and distribution at 1215 North Service Road represents 80% of the total floor area. Therefore, the proposed restriction to 50% of the floor area offers no relief from the original amendments to eliminate such uses. It's been suggested that it's possible for property owners to get relief from such restrictions by making an application to the Committee of Adjustments. This may be true, but practically speaking, it's not realistic. When faced with this prospect, many businesses will take the path of least resistance and source an alternate location rather than deal with a time-consuming bureaucracy. More often than not, speed of occupancy is all important, and waiting for months for an answer without guaranteed success is not acceptable to the business community. I speak from experience when I make this statement. We have a location in Burlington that was zoned employment lands, GE2. A similar situation arose when Burlington amended its zoning bylaws and removed manufacturing as a permitted use within GE2 zoning. Our multi-tenant, multi-building property was constructed in the late 60s and early 70s and is specifically designed for manufacturing. The buildings went from offering ideal manufacturing premises for small businesses to languishing on the market, in some cases, for 2 years before finding a suitable occupant. I can assure you, before this amendment came into force, it was inconceivable to imagine a 2-year vacancy at our property. I mention this example because we see similar situations developing on our lands in Oakville. Therefore, we are respectfully requesting consideration to permit each of these addresses to continue allowing industrial operations as they exist today, without floor area restrictions. In order to continue industrial operations as they exist today, we require industrial use and wholesaling and distribution as permissible uses. Eliminating or restricting such uses from existing buildings that have been specifically designed to service industrially based businesses is, quite frankly, punitive and totally unnecessary, especially when the proposed 2014 official plan amendment includes light industrial uses as permissible in office employment zones. So why impose restrictions on existing buildings? Thank you.
Thank you for information. I wonder, were you reading a prepared statement?
Yes, I was.
Have you provided it to staff?
Not in detail, no.
Would you like to?
I would.
The clerk will collect it from you if that's
I'll make some amendments to
convenient
it and
for
send
you.
it to you. Thank you.
Questions, council? Thank you for your information, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Next delegation for item 2 is Reverend Niaz Toma on behalf of the Chaldean Catholic community in Oakville.
Reverend Toma, welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of the council. I'm here to forgive you. Oh, no, just good. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Chaldean Catholic community that I represent, and it is the community that extends in the cities of Hamilton, Burlington, Oakville, and Mississauga. So I'm behind the wheel 24/7. And present with me are members of the parochial council in Oakville with the community architects. We are here to show our objection to the removal of the place of worship use from the list of permitted uses in Zone E4, while it was there when the first draft was out. So who are the Chaldeans, and what is the significance of having a church built in the lot that we purchased in light of the draft that we saw, actually? And we just purchased that piece of land on 2036 Upper Middle Road East. So let me start with introducing ourselves. The Chaldeans are the descendants of the ancient civilization in the world. You may hear from time to time from Greek people that the ancient Greeks have invented the wheel. Don't believe it. We did it. So the first wheel was invented in Mesopotamia. The first law was written. Writing was invented there. We, as Christians, in our presence, date back to the 1st century. We were evangelized by St. Thomas the Apostle, one of the 12 apostles of Jesus Christ. And nowadays we are persecuted. You watch on TV, unfortunately, a distorted image of who an Iraqi is, but the Iraqi Christian community was and continue to be a pioneering, a beacon of hope to the entire Middle East. In the United States of America, we are well established. We have had a congressman, even in the American Congress. We are 250,000 in the United States of America. In Michigan itself, we have 15 churches. In Canada, we still consider ourselves newcomers, yet we achieved a lot. We have churches in almost scattered all over the country. We have 10 parochial centers. The largest community is in Toronto. Prime Minister Stephen Harper mentioned the Chaldeans at least 3 times. And we have 10 people from our community who have received the Diamond Jubilee Medal of Queen Elizabeth. I have had the privilege to represent the Canadian people last March, accompanying the Honorable Jason Kenney in one of his overseas trips. In Oakville, we have a vital community. People in Oakville worship coming from Oakville itself, from Mississauga, from Milton, Burlington, and some from Hamilton. Why do we want a church to be built in Oakville because Oakville is the greatest town in the world. This is said, there are also some considerations which are the following. This project comes in accordance with the Livable Oakville. Also, this project will enrich the social fabric of this great town, having such a vital community present here. We don't have a church building neither in Oakville nor in the cities that I mentioned. Why did we choose Oakville? Because Oakville is the middle point. It's the center of all the existence of our presence in these cities. Also, this project will add to the significance of Oakville. We are proud as Canadians to be multicultural, and having a Chaldean community established in Oakville will add to the significance of the town of Oakville. I have here with me signatures gathered from 2 Saturdays ago, and it was not, you can review the Chaldean calendar, which differs from the Roman Catholic, although we are Catholics, but we have our own calendar. So it's not a memorial, it's not a feast, it's a regular weekly Mass, and I have 308 signatures from adults. This is excluding the minors who attended the Mass, so the regular, usual attendance is about 400. So we have a great hope that you will take this into consideration and review the amendment that the Council has made in removing the use of place of worship. And I would conclude by saying, since we invented writing, you are indebted to us. Do us a favor, pay us back, get it back to the list. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your information and the delightful history. Are there questions? Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation here to speak to item 2 is Bruce Miller, representing the West River Residents Association.
Mr. Miller, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Just for clarity, I'm actually here representing about 12 of my neighbor friends that, you know, being at the age that we are with kids at home, unfortunately they're getting their kids back from school, from programs, getting them fed and getting them to bed, which is probably where I should be. But so I'm not representing the West River Association. So thank you for the opportunity to talk tonight. I am a proud Oakville resident and have been for the last dozen years or so. I'm also a proud business owner, employing about 75 people within the Oakville area. But I'm much like a lot of people. When my wife and I, we were choosing to be able to relocate from our previous home, which was Toronto, is that we chose Oakville because it was a great community to live in. We chose Oakville because it had great schools and great programs, but we also chose Oakville because of the real estate, and it was a great investment. We feel that that investment needs to be able to be continued, is that despite the fact that I live within West River, and I live within a community that has a whole bunch of houses, originals from the 1950s, some that have been renovated, some that have been completely torn down and rebuilt. In fact, I live between 2 McMansions, as the councillor talks about. But I'm not actually here to be able to stop growth. Even though I lived through the demolition woes and all the construction, and in fact my neighbor is here tonight, which is kind of ironic, but he's a great neighbor, and I'm not here to oppose it. I actually think that it's actually going to slow down the growth within our community, and will slow down our investment. I feel that, you know, we're in a kind of a half-pregnant state, is that if we wanted to stop these housing developments, we should have done it 15, 20 years ago. We didn't. That decision was made to be able to allow those developments. I think it was the right choice. But if we go and try to limit it at this point, I think it's going to hurt everybody. Because in that half-pregnant state, you're going to hurt developers that are looking to be able to come in, because they're going to see a cap in their market value in terms of their prices, because their housing prices, unlike the last 5-10 years that continue to climb in Oakville as a good investment, will likely level more and become a whole lot slower. Secondly, you're going to hurt people within my neighborhood that would like to renovate. Maybe not this year, maybe next year, maybe 5 years down the road. They've purchased this property with the intent of saving money to be able to do this. And if you cap their ability to and flexibility to be able to go and renovate their house, it's going to limit their ability. But the people that I think are also forgotten about is people like myself and my wife. We have no plans on moving. We love where we are, and we have no plans on renovating. But it does also affect us, is that you're capping out in terms of the housing values that keep climbing up. Our home equity is going up. It allows us to be able to pull money out, to be able to travel, to be able to spend money on our kids or a business. It affects us as well. So to be able to go and limit this growth, in my estimation, will actually limit all three levels of categories that I'm talking about. And therefore that it does have an impact overall on Oakville and the appeal to Oakville, which brings so many of us into this community. Lastly, I'd say is that I know one of the major objectives in terms of this is to be able to limit growth or McMansions, if you will. I would actually say macroeconomics will do that for you. So there's a reason why we've had this kind of development explosion over the last 5 to 10 years. The interest rates are at a 20-year low. That is why the borrowing of money is very easy to be able to obtain, and therefore to be able to go and build and develop. So I would ascertain that as any market cycle continues, the interest rates are going to go up. You do have your own limiting factor. It's called the economy. You don't have to put bylaws or policies in place to be able to control that growth. We just happen to be at a hot control. We happen to be at a growth point that is hot right now. It will slow. It will naturally slow. So, please, on behalf of families that are looking to develop later, that are looking not to develop, that are looking to be able to have these developers continue to come into the areas, because we do think they're accelerating the growth and housing values within Oakville. We'd ask you to be able to keep the bylaw policies where they are today, to be able to help us all contribute to and prosper from just a great economic environment here. These are our investments. Allow them to continue to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Madam Clerk, next delegation.
Next delegation is Mr. David Fay, here to speak to item 1 and 2 from Melrose Investments.
Mr. Fay, welcome. Council looks forward to your information. Have you
Thank you,
provided
Roger.
us with submissions in writing as well?
I thought you would have read it already, Your Worship. You should have my letter that I
I just
delivered
wanted
the
to know
clerk's office.
whether you were going to bring us new or what. So off you go.
I'm going to point out a few of the items in my letter.
Okay.
But I am here to speak to both of the matters, the OP amendment for Livable Oakville and for the 2004 zoning bylaw.
And that's a very welcome declaration, and it proves that you're a professional.
Thank you. And I'm here to speak on behalf of Melrose Investments, which owns employment lands in the Burloak employment area, just to the east and to the south of the Riocan Power Center, owns land on Spears Road to the east of Third Line, and owns land on Cornwall Road to the west of Maple Grove Drive. All of those sites are changing in terms of their zoning. With respect to the Burloak employment area, we'll see a change from light industrial and general industrial in the current bylaws to E2 and E3, which is business, employment, and industrial. Now, Melrose is generally satisfied with the uses proposed in those two zoning categories, but I have in my letter that I trust you will read, suggested some additional uses which would be appropriate for the E2 zone, and would ask for your consideration and staff's consideration of that request. Melrose does own 2 blocks of land on the south side of Wycroft, as I mentioned, across the road from the retail block run by RioCan. And there is a special provision in bylaw 1984-63 which deals with the zoning of that entire site. That special provision has been carried forward in part in the proposed new bylaw, special provisions 259 and 260, which I would like to speak further to staff about, since I don't think the entire provision is reflected in the redrafted provisions in the new bylaw. So further discussion with staff is required. With respect to the Cornwall Road properties, one of which has a completed 2-story office building constructed, one of which has another office building under construction of 2 stories, and one which has an office building being contemplated across the road. The zoning is going to be E2. And as I mentioned, with respect to the Burloak lands, E2 uses are generally acceptable to Melrose. Same request here, some additional uses which we think would be appropriate could be considered by council and staff to provide for a little more variety in the uses for prospective tenants. The official plan amendment deals with the property on Spears Road at 1410 Spears Road, which is currently designated office employment, which permits light industrial uses, is going to be redesignated in the amendment before you to business commercial and rezoned to business commercial, which does not permit light industrial uses. Now, similar to a couple of the speakers before me, the Melrose building at 1410 Spears Road is an older industrial building, well maintained, but has been the home for many manufacturing and wholesaling and distribution companies over the years, and that has been an important part of the tenancy in that building since it was constructed 40 years ago. The loss of that light industrial wholesaling distribution function is very significant, and Melrose feels strongly that there should be some further consideration of a greater range of uses for that building, lest we see it more and more difficult to lease. And you heard from a previous speaker about that development and the fact that that is not good for the town or for the landlord and doesn't provide appropriate opportunities for prospective tenants. So we'd wish to continue to work with staff and with council to work on a broader range of uses for that building, and we alert you to the fact that we need further negotiation on that matter. Your Worship, that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Appreciate the information, and I hope you heard the presentation at the start of the meeting that staff are looking forward to those discussions with any and all. So I bid you Godspeed in those discussions.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is here to speak to item 2, Chris Stoyanovich, the Senior Associate for Macaulay Shiomi Housen Limited.
We will find out. Mr. Stoyanovich.
Your Worship, members of council, thank you. I'll try to be brief. All of our submissions are in the package, including correspondence with Mr. Netherly and the Planning Services Department, and meetings, summaries of meetings that we've had over the summer. We have reached agreement on some points. There's still others that need to be debated, and I look forward to further meetings prior to the zoning bylaws adoption hopefully in February. There are 2, I guess, specific points that I just wish to raise tonight, and that's why I suggested I'll be fairly brief. One, my clients, Silwell and Poncenet, Main Street own significant land holdings in uptown core area Oakville. Some of those properties are built, have buildings on them. Some of them are under construction. And others are vacant and subject to making application. They'll be impacted obviously by the new zoning bylaw. With respect to the buildings that are already built, one of the questions that I have of staff, and I will pursue this, is will any of those buildings that are already built and approved under the own bylaw be cast into a non-conforming status? So that's question number one. My second point relates to the vacant parcels. And one point that we've debated with staff now over a series of meetings, and we've provided staff with evidence with respect to, in the mixed use, Section 8 mixed use zones, the maximum commercial unit size on ground floor space. Now, what I'd like council and staff to understand is that many of the parcels that we're dealing with owned by my clients are significantly large. They're 2.5, 4 acre sites. Subject to making development applications, there may be a building and a building footprint that is 20 and 30,000 square feet in size. My clients feel that in order to invest in those properties and invest those buildings and attract the group of tenants that they would like, whether they were retail, whether they're service commercial, or whether they're office tenants, that they need the 500 meter squared maximum unit size increased. And we can debate in terms of how much it needs to be increased by, but in a building that fronts on Dundas, one of the parcels fronts on Dundas west of Oak Park Boulevard as an example, 30,000 square foot building, they would like, if a tenant came along and said, I need 10,000 square feet or 12,000 square feet of space, they would like, as of right, to be able to lease to that tenant. The way that the bylaw is set up, maximum 500 square meters, 5,000 square feet, they would need to make a zoning bylaw amendment or a minor variance application. They understand that all of the other provisions in the bylaw would apply. The evolving design guidelines are coming into play, that how the buildings address the street, how they're designed, the use of materials, etc., all subject to control by the town of Oakville. But at the end of the day, how the interior walls of that building are demised, the leasability of that space, and their ability to be able to effectively lease it and invest in those properties and in those buildings will be somewhat determined by who they can attract to that space. So again, to repeat myself and to conclude my presentation, the Section 8 mixed-use zone provisions, I think it's Section 8.2 under permitted uses. There's a regulation, number 7, I believe, and it caps the maximum commercial unit, and that's retail, service commercial, or office, to 500 square meters. So we would like to have that increased. And again, subject to discussion with staff, we hope at the end of the day that a positive recommendation can go forward to this committee and ultimately council, and the bylaw could be adopted with an increased size. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your information. Questions? Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation speaking to item 2 is Charlene Pluman.
Charlene Pluman. There she is.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. I should clarify that I am here this evening as a resident. I have the joy of living and working in the same area, and so you may also know that I'm a part of the Oakville Downtown BIA, but tonight I am here as a resident, so I wanted to make that clear for the record. I know we're running short on time. I should also commend, we have a young gentleman with us this evening who has very patiently joined us all evening, and I think he should be commended for sitting here and being patient and joining us, because if our future is in his hands, I think we're in good hands. So I just thought we should point out that he's joined us very patiently all evening. Here tonight, I do have a couple concerns. I should thank the staff that in the open house today, several of my concerns were addressed, so thank you for having the open house and addressing those concerns. As a homeowner, we purchased our home with the intention of being able to develop it into what we needed it to be to support us as a family to be able to live in Oakville. And I do have a couple concerns about the proposals that I would like the staff to take some time to consider and review. One is the front yard allowances as it's proposed right now. It would be an average of the two houses on either side of you for the minimum setback that you need for the front yard. If in my instance and a lot of my neighbors, we're all dead in a line. So we would then have to be straight in a line with our neighbors continuing along the way. I agree that we wouldn't want to have huge increases or decreases of that setback, but I think some variance could be allowed to give variation to the streetscape of that neighborhood, that it would add variety, it would add people some flexibility for usability of the space as they make changes. So to have it be, perhaps it's an average of the two on either side, give or take a meter, give or take 2 meters. So giving some ability to have some change to the front of that building for the use of the building to be a little bit more flexible and also allow for a little bit of a difference in curb appeal. The other concern that I have with the document going forward is the designation of accessory building, and especially in relation to a detached garage. Mr. Khan had brought some of this concern up about the clarification between accessory buildings. I see that there's a difference in size if it's a garage that's considered an accessory building because it's detached versus what you're allowed to have if it's an attached garage. I understand the reasoning for those as it does change the square footage of the area of your house, so I get that. We're fortunate. I'm actually not fighting on this behalf or on this point for my own behalf. We purposely purchased our house because it has a large garage. My husband likes anything with a motor, and so we had to have spots to put at. So we're not so affected, but some of our neighbors would be. And I think in terms of an accessory building now being restricted to 5%, and I appreciate there may be a clarification as we did find that typo today, that it should be perhaps 5% or greater. 5% or 42 square meters, the greater of the two. I believe there was a typo that we addressed earlier. But if we're looking at keeping, in keeping with houses in the neighborhood, in how they look and how the neighborhood looks, if I was to build new, I'm now allowed to build a much bigger garage if it's attached to my house. And if it's attached to my house, the front of the house is now going to primarily be garage, which would very much not be in keeping with the look and feel of the neighborhood. If the garage is a detached in the back of my home, it now, according to the new restrictions, must be much smaller, which is less than appealing for anybody like my husband who likes engines, and would, at that choice, decide to attach it to the house and have it be front and center, which would drastically change the look and feel of our neighborhood versus allowing it to be detached in the back, but of a greater size. So I should probably not raise that point because I'm lucky where we're at, but something I think should be considered is that if we are limiting the size that an accessory building can be, we're going to turn off people from the opportunity to have a garage behind their home. We're going to be encouraging them to have it be full front garage all in front so they can take advantage of that space, and that would drastically change the look of the buildings. The final concern is, as we've already addressed, there was at least one typo. I've found 3 or 4 more. I appreciate that with the document this size, excuse me, there is no way to get it perfect the first 2 or 3 rounds around it. It's a huge document. I think the staff has done an amazing job getting it where it's at, but a couple key typos, one being that it, with the accessory buildings currently states lesser and it should state greater. There was 2 others with the lot frontage, minimum, maximum. I think it's a copy paste. I've addressed it with Mr. Netherly so he knows where to look, and I'm happy to speak to it again rather than taking the time this evening. But again, it was a copy and paste where it basically says the same thing. So there is no variance listed. It's listed as one and the same. So I think there's a couple areas in the document that should be addressed there.
Thank you very much for your information, Ms. Fluid. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is speaking to item 2, Massimo Iannuzzi.
Mr. Iannuzzi, welcome. And if I have that wrong, you just correct me, please.
No, it's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Perfect pronunciation. Your Worship, Town Council, I just want to express my support for the staff recommendation as written for permitted uses in all of the CBD. Thank you.
Thank you. You get the prize for the shortest delegation, I think.
Next delegation, speaking to item 2 is Pauline Watson.
Ms. Watson, I don't see her, actually.
Next delegation is speaking to item 2, Todd Woodell.
Mr. Woodell, welcome.
Hello, Your Worship and Councils. I'm a business owner in Bronte. Been there for 19 years. We've been running the business for 45 years in the family. We purchased the building about 10 years ago. Don't have any plans on doing anything with it at the present time, but we feel with the new zoning regulations that we might be restricted on what possibly could be done. We're a 2-floor unit itself right now. There's, according to the new zoning, we'll be allowed to put 4 floors on it. But if we're trying to do development in Bronte and stuff, we feel that 4 floors just isn't going to be enough. So I've basically stated what a lot of the fellow BIA and members have said over the years. We've got very little development going on in Bronte right now, as you can see. The mall's been basically put on hold because of lease issues with Sobeys and other things. And we just feel that they should be looking through council and stuff that we could be doing a lot more with the Bronte area, possibly maybe making it 6 floors as opposed to 4. There's certain areas that are allowed to do the 6 in our area, and we just feel that they're kind of mixing the 2 up. And that's all I have to say, really. Thank you.
Thank you for your information. You were competitive with the other one. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is Alex Moshtag, speaking to item 2.
Welcome, sir. Council looks forward to your information, and thank you for addressing the microphone for me.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council members. Thank you, Mr. Robinson, for addressing some of our concerns here tonight. At the beginning, I'm a business owner, and we recently moved to Oakville and purchased the building in Bronte Village. And as you've heard this evening, you know, Bronte has been facing some issues. We've touched on a little bit about the revitalization of Bronte Village to get some businesses in. Many of the shops there are vacant. There's not a lot of traffic that goes by there. We have a large population of senior citizens who are using it as a sort of a transition point, I guess. Revitalization cannot go without growth. And we feel, me and my partners, that these limitations put on by zoning department can really negatively affect growth in this area. If you look at the Bronte Village area, and it has been designated as a village, between, I believe, Nelson and Bronte, we're surrounded by 2 areas, one of condos and large apartment buildings to the east, and more recently, some taller condos going in towards the west end of the Bronte Village, with Amica coming and the proposed Sobeys Plaza. But unfortunately, the center commercial area of Bronte Village has been passed. More or less, the whole stretch of that unit has been limited to a 4-story development. Now, if we want to have the growth to revitalize the area, we will need a much greater development to go in there. And we believe that 4 floors are just not enough. As a business owner, Mr. Gardner said it very eloquently, that a lot of our businesses, we go there with the hopes that our business will catch. I believe there's another face to that as well. Either it's the fact that our business will prosper and grow so we can prosper and grow as families. And if it doesn't, there's always the hope that a developer or even ourselves will develop and see a return and a reward that way. Many of the buildings with the live-in works that have been built there, which are 3 stories right now, nobody is going to come and purchase those buildings, demolish them, and build a 4-story building. The developers will not come to Bronte Village. And I think all of these things said, it does go against the revitalization mandate that the town has for this area. I thank you very much for your time.
And thank you very much for your participation. Will you be at the, I'll come to you in just a second.
Absolutely.
Thank you for waving your arm. I hadn't seen you. Will you be at the?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Demoff has a question for you as well.
Well, the question is actually for staff to clarify something, because this is the second delegation who said that Bronte's not designated as a business district, but as a village. So can you clarify that for me?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Demoff. Bronte Village is actually identified in Livable Oakville as a growth area, as the Bronte Village area. And through Livable Oakville, there was a study that was undertaken in a long consultation process to arrive at the mixed-use policies that do allow for a range of uses on the ground floor and above that range in height depending on the location. But those references to height limits are set in the approved official plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Director, I wonder if you might consider supplementing the session at Walton Church with information and members of your staff who could speak to the Bronte Village plan. And because some of what we heard, I think, reflects people joining us in progress and maybe not knowing what there is. And so if you gave people a grounding, the whole thing might make more sense and be less mysterious.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, as we were sitting here, we were discussing November 13th and the intention for actually myself to attend and provide that information, and also to reiterate that we're very much approachable. We may look slick, but we're very approachable.
Well, we know that, and we hope that, thousands of people learned to approach you during the Livable Oakville plan creation, so I'm sure the reputation will spread that you're fun to talk to. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation speaking to item 2 is Guy Dorbeck.
Mr. Dorbeck. Welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. My name is Guy Dorbeck, and I'm here representing a family business that has been here in Oakville for, well, since the 50s. We own and lease out a number of commercial properties along Spears Road, specifically between Third Line and Bronte Road. And my concern here tonight is over the fact that the proposed E1 rezoning definition is removing a couple of key words, and that is the light industrial uses. When we built these, when we constructed these buildings back in the 70s, it was, we actually purchased the land from the town for the purpose of building employment type properties. And that's what they are today. They're currently occupied by light manufacturing tenants. And my concern is what happens when these tenants leave, because eventually they do. Many have been there for as long as 15 years. I can't see with the new definition under E1 zoning that somebody's going to want to turn my purpose-built industrial building into a hotel or some of the other suggested uses that have been proposed. So if some of my comments tonight sound a little bit frantic and half-baked, it's because they are. I just found out about this whole thing on Friday of last week and met with Joe Nethery this evening, and he was very, very accommodating in terms of trying to get my head straight and wrapped around what we have to do going forward. So I'm very glad that decisions are not being made here tonight and that the consultation process rolls forward. So I will be meeting with Joe Nethery in the very near future to try and get some of my thoughts more cogently prepared. So one of the other comments that I wanted to make was, aside from being very concerned about maintaining the light industrial usage in the E1 zoning, is that what I'm finding is that I have one of my buildings is currently available for lease, and the only people who are walking through the door are not light industrial users, they're retail users to a person. I've had a parade of retail type operations coming through, looking at the building and saying, this is perfect. The building is perfect for what we need. And I say, oops, too bad. It's not zoned for retail. And typically, their use involves a certain amount of warehouse space, so it's not 15% or a very small percentage of the square footage for retail space, and the rest warehouse space would not be suitable for their uses. So that's a severe restriction and an automatic disqualification for their particular use. So I just have to wonder, and one of the things that I voiced with Joe Nethery this evening was that maybe we should be looking very closely at if the purpose of redefining the E1 zoning uses is to soften those uses because they are adjacent to residential. Some of the suggested uses may not necessarily achieve that, but I think that certain retail uses would. And when I say retail, don't think Costco. Please don't think Costco, because it's always a zoo almost any time their doors are open. But there are many retail operations that have much lower traffic coefficients. And I think that maybe some of those uses should be allowed into the E1 zoning in order to achieve that softening of the fact that it abuts residential. So thank you very much for this opportunity to comment.
Thank you for bringing your information. I hope that you'll continue the dialogue with Mr. Nethery and the rest of the planning staff as appropriate. We on council are aware of stretches of spheres where what you're describing does exist, and that too, I think, is a worthwhile point to discuss with them. So, in fact, I think what you're a perfect example of is the value to the town and the residents of the consultation method that our planning director and our planning commissioner have introduced to Oakville, what I call the iterative consultation that we do, where we keep going back, seeking consensus, and that's what we're doing here tonight. And so I thank you for your part in it.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation listed for item 2 is Peter Mart, representing Stone Shore Designs Build.
Mr. Mart, welcome.
Your Worship, members of council, town staff. First of all, I'd like to thank the town staff for all the help they've given us. We spent some time with Joe, and he's been very receptive to the ideas that we have presented regarding one of the zoning changes that is being proposed, and that change is the coverage area to 19% from what it's currently being used as. I've prepared a document which I've given to town staff, and I have a copy for you also, or for your staff also. Essentially, it makes it very, very difficult from a building point of view. Maybe I should give you a little bit of background. I've been building houses in Oakville for 22 years. My wife and I met at Blakelock High School. So we're longtime residents, and we're a small business operation. We never spec build houses. We build specifically for our customers. The 19% is very restrictive, and we've made some suggestions to Joe as to what might be workable, and we've done some analysis on our own and presented some scenarios that may work. And I'll just leave it at that. We'll hand it to...
Thank you. We appreciate the input, and I'm sure staff will dialogue with you.
Yeah, we are continuing to talk about it with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Demoff, I beg your pardon.
It's okay. You said you had presented some options that you could live with. Are you providing those to us as well?
They're in those documents,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Hopefully they'll work. We're not being greedy either. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Next delegation speaking to item 2 is Paul Riban, representing Stone Mill Developments, Inc.
Good evening, Mr. Riban?
Ribot.
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 Thank you very much for the help with that.
Hi. Your Worship, council members, thank you for having this session. I have not had the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Nethery yet with regards to this. I just want to kind of paint a picture of you know, where sort of future trends are going in the home building. I'm with Stone Mill Developments. We've been building here in Oakville for 18 years, like Peter. And there's been a big trend in bungalofts, where people are not necessarily building McMansions. We're building larger, comfortable homes, but not, you know, 5,000 square feet or 3,200 square feet. The current zoning that's being proposed does not allow for main floor master bedrooms to be added to a decent floor plan. And the best way to describe this is maybe just to go through a quick scenario with, let's say, an RO2 zoning as an example, a 75 by 150 lot. Presently, that's 11,250 square foot lot. You have a 30% footprint, so you'd be allowed to put a 3,375 square foot footprint on that lot. Subtract your garage, 484 square feet. Subtract, let's say, 300 square feet for a front porch and maybe a rear porch. Let's take 700 square feet off that. You have a livable space of 2,596 for your main floor. 2,500 square feet approximately for your main floor. Under the new act, or the new bylaw that's being, or zoning that's being proposed for the RL2, you'd be limited to only 22% for your footprint, which, once you subtract a garage of 484 square feet and 300 square feet of porches, that leaves you with only 1,600 square feet, 1,675 square feet of livable house. However, it does allow you to double up on your square footage, so your gross floor area, you'd be allowed to build 3,866 square feet. Whereas currently, you're only allowed 3,450 square feet. So we're actually allowing to build bigger home on that lot, but we're taking away the flexibility of having, let's say, a main floor master. What I'm kind of hoping that we get to some time to work with planning is to maybe create some sort of language for the bungaloft. It's something that, like this year alone, we're building 4 of them here in Oakville. We've been seeing a trend of people selling their 5,000 square footer and building a bungaloft. And basically the bungaloft is main floor master, 2 bedrooms upstairs, approximately 700 square feet upstairs. And it's ideal for people that children have gone to university, they're not living at home. We're not ready for the condo. We still like the house. We're used to having a big kitchen, big family room, and you know, lots of comfortable space. When the kids come home and, you know, at Easter, Christmas, they have their bedrooms upstairs, etc. This is the type of housing that people have been coming to us and we've been designing and building lately. And this zoning is going to kill that. So I'm hoping that we can write some language into that addresses the bungaloft. Presently, the bungaloft is considered a two-story. No different than, let's say, a 1.5 story is considered a two-story, which would put it in the RL2 and limit it to 22% for your footprint. So what I'm proposing is we don't need more GFA. We don't need more stairs. We're an aging population, and we need to kind of look at that and look at where Oakville's going, the type of people that want to be living here in Oakville. We don't necessarily want to have all these stairs, so we want our 2-car garage. We want our big family room. We want our big kitchen. I still like a dining room. So the choices I'm going to have to make with our clients and even myself in coming years is, do I give up the dining room to get my master bedroom? I don't want to do that. And I don't think we should have to. We have a great zoning in place right now. If we can tighten it, and we don't need McMansions, but we do need to be able to work that footprint to the 30%. So presently, there's going to be no change in the bungalow. We're still going to be allowed our 30% in RO2s, 35% in RO3s. But the minute you put 2 bedrooms upstairs and call it a bungaloft, it's considered a 2-story, and that kind of throws our whole bungaloft concept out the window for the RO1, 2, and 3 zoning. So what I'm hoping is that, one, bring it to your attention that we are eliminating our master bedrooms on the main floor with this new zoning, and hopefully we can identify that, and maybe let's try to give the bungaloft a category. And this, by the time we ever get to write a new zoning bylaw, it might be 20 years from now, and that'll be too late. Now's the time to actually address this concept, and we're not asking for much. It's just something that I'm hoping we can consider. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for adding the concept to our agenda. I take it you were here and you heard my previous remarks about they like to talk to you.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk? Council, who would like to give a motion to go beyond the hour? Councillor Lapworth, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Madam Clerk?
Next delegation to speak to item 2 is Colin Lance?
Calvin.
Calvin Lance, representing Stikeman Elliott.
Mr. Lance, we don't see Stikeman's here very often. Welcome.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Worship. I'm here tonight. I'm Calvin Lance. I'm with Stikeman Elliott, and I happen to be a municipal lawyer, and I specialize in land use development and land use planning. I'm also a resident of Oakville, and I've signed in, and I've also submitted a number of comments in the form of letters to the city in reference to the new zoning bylaw. What I'd like to do in my deputation is just touch on a few points and just highlight a few points, if I may. I think the first thing I'd like to say is that I'd like to commend staff for coming up with a very comprehensive and readable zoning bylaw. I've been working with other municipalities, City of Toronto, City of Kitchener, Kingston. I've had a lot of exposure to the exercise of coming up with a new zoning bylaw that works to afford conformity with official plan changes that have occurred in the last number of years. And so I think they've done a great job. I have, however, noticed some ambiguities in the definitions, and we heard Councillor Khan speak to some of those ambiguities. And I also heard that staff are willing to review that language to ensure that there is clarity going forward. So I think that's a positive thing. I think one thing that I'd like to highlight, and I think you've heard it in the comments that were made here earlier, is that people are attracted to Oakville for a number of reasons. And one of the primary reasons they're attracted to Oakville is because of the unique quality and attention that's given to the built form housing that we have here and the relationship between houses. And that's a great thing, and that's been reflected in the new official plan and also in the urban design guidelines that have been endorsed by council. What I am seeing, however, is that there appears to be a lack or a disconnect rather between what we're seeing in the new draft bylaw and the vision that is captured in the official plan and the urban design guidelines. And just by one example, if you look at the R1, the RO1 zone currently, which is proposed to be the RL1 zone, for lots of a certain size, the coverage is limited to 19%, and we heard a former delegate speak to that point. I have talked to developers in Oakville, and they've said, yeah, they can live with that restriction, possibly, but it'll mean we're building shoeboxes. And I don't think that is the intent of the drafters of the bylaw, and I don't think that was the intent when city staff proposed the language of the official plan or the urban design guidelines. The built form in Oakville is unique. It's very attractive. There's a variety of built form, and it's not a series of shoeboxes. So just as a cautionary note to councillors here tonight, I think staff should be encouraged to review the zoning relative to the urban design guidelines to see if, in fact, if these zoning bylaw provisions are encouraging the vision that's been articulated in the urban design guidelines and in the official plan. The last point I would like to speak on tonight are the transitional provisions. The transitional provisions, I understand in the first draft of the zoning bylaw, there were no transitional provisions proposed. And I understand from reviewing the bylaw now, there are 3 provisions proposed. And I would strongly encourage council to look at that carefully. The transitional provisions that are being proposed do not go far enough. They're not broad enough. And they don't capture, in particular, applications that are made, complete applications for a minor variance or a complete application for site plan approval. It could go further. And we understand that people purchase properties, they have families, they want to move forward with a plan, and they've done so in many cases. They've hired architects, they've hired an arborist, they've hired a surveyor, they've put together a proposal, they make an application to the Committee of Adjustment. And if they're successful and the new bylaws passed before the decision's made on that application, they may have to start the process over. They may have to redesign the building in reference to a bylaw which today is draft and which today is still in flux. Changes can be made to this bylaw on the floor of council on February 10th, 2014. And so it's difficult to have the community accept the fact that the rules may change in the middle of the game. And it's not fair. And what we heard from staff, and I'll be interested in speaking with them more about this, is that, well, it's prejudicial, or we have to watch out for conformity with the official plans. I can tell council, as a lawyer who practices in this area, I find it hard to understand how perhaps adding an extra foot to a building is going to bring that minor variance decision out of conformity with official plan. But I think what's more interesting is the City of Toronto has that provision. If you look at the transitional provisions in the City of Toronto's new zoning bylaw, it has a provision that provides a grandfathering grace period of 2 years for a complete minor variance application. And if you don't want to look at the City of Toronto, then look at the region of Halton itself. Milton is doing it. So what I find hard to understand is how is it that staff in Oakville think that it's prejudicial and perhaps risking some form of illegality to allow that kind of grandfathering for complete minor variance applications when in fact the City of Toronto's done it and Milton is currently doing it. They're going through the same exercise that Oakville's going through right now. So that at a minimum needs to be reconciled. So I look forward to speaking with staff further. We have meetings set up this week, and I'd like to congratulate them again on a document well crafted.
Thank you for your participation, sir. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation speaking to item 2 is Peter Rolls.
Mr. Rolls, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. My name is Peter Rolls. I'm a resident of West River, and I'm here this evening representing myself, my wife, and some of my neighbours in Washington Avenue. Now, as you may know, the lot sizes in Washington Avenue are significantly smaller than many of the other streets around. Queen Mary Drive is one example. So our concern is that the proposals to the zoning will actually have a bigger impact on the absolute size of buildings in Washington Avenue and some of the other streets that have the smaller lot size. And we think that that will act as a disincentive to investment, whether they're developers or people wanting a larger house for their family. And so we feel that it will tend to make this area become the poor relation for the whole of the West River Association, and could almost become a little bit of a ghetto. Most of the houses in the street in that area were built in the 50s. They have no architectural value. They're ugly. They're not well insulated, and it would certainly be of benefit to the whole area, we think, if there were no restrictions, or sorry, not no restrictions, but if the new proposals are not accepted. So on that basis, we are actually against the new proposals for zoning. But I would ask one question of the town. If they are approved and they come into effect, would the town be amenable to make an exception for a street like Washington where the lot sizes are smaller than in many other areas? So that's a question that I throw out.
I don't think staff would want to make a commitment to a question like that tonight, but I can assure you that staff and council are going to turn their mind to this question. As you've heard, I've seen you patiently saw many other representations on this point. And clearly we need to give this careful thinking, and we will.
Okay, thank you. I have one other question, actually.
Sure.
I've noticed with a lot of the new development, the McMansions, as people are calling them, when they're being built, a lot of them have a variance application on them. Would it not be possible to restrict the size of the McMansions by being more stringent on the allowing of the current variances without having to actually change the zoning bylaws?
The easy answer, the simplest way to answer that is, that's actually, in order to do that, you have to do something like what staff are proposing. And so, as we're getting an unintended consequence we may be getting an unintended consequence on the path we're on, we will turn our minds to this entire question afresh.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation for item 2 is Attilio Ventresca.
Mr. Ventresca? Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Attilio Ventresca. You know, I'm Italian. I'm not too good in English, but gonna try. The reason I'm here for what's going on in Bronte, we buy a commercial property in Bronte in 1996. And I told my wife it's going to be a good place because I like Bronte. But I'm a little disappointed about it now because Bronte is still the same the way it was in 1996. Nothing get better. Now they're coming up with this new bylaw, and I have to be honest. I'm going to be a Bronte resident in 2 weeks. I'll build beautiful bungalow, but I don't know if I'm going to stay in Bronte because if they're going to change, my commercial property worth nothing. I don't know if I explain myself. I'm sorry if I'm not too clear. I have a property in Etobicoke, Port Craig, Cockeysville, and Orangeville, wherever, Hamilton, but all good. I'm very happy Canada, but what's going on in Bronte, I'm not happy at all. Because still that's the old mall and nothing happened there. And now, what am I going to do with my store when I got my tenants that say to me, we can't pay rent anymore. We got to get all together. Like the last meeting, I said, the town of Oakville have to be in the front. Are we going to fall? What the town of Oakville want, we're going to work together. We have to improve Bronte. Because like that, Bronte is going to be nothing in 20 years. I'm sorry for my English. I finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming, sir, and there was nothing wrong with your English. I think I heard you loud and clear.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
There are no further delegations listed.
Well, Council, there's a possibility, at least in theory, that we won't need the recess date. Are there other members of the public with information for Council tonight? Thank you, everyone, for coming. I hope everyone knows that staff they will welcome any second thoughts you may have tomorrow. If you wake up wishing you'd said something tonight, you'll still be able to say it. They're available by phone, email, and letter, and in person. And I thank everyone for joining us tonight for this public hearing. Madam Clerk, do you have? That's what I want. So, Council, if one of you were of a mind to move that the comments from the public with respect to the proposed official plan amendment to address in-zone conformity and housekeeping matters in the Livable Oakville plan be received, that would be Councillor Knoll. Thank you. Well, I felt some bond with Councillor Knoll here, so he got the nod. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Now, I'll look this way this time. Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Knoll has moved that the comments from the public with respect to the proposed 2014 zoning bylaw be received. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And those are carried. And please note that on item number 2, Councillors Adams and Khan did not participate owing to their declaration of a possible conflict on the matter. And on item 1, you guys were fine, right? Okay. The record will so show. Would one of you oblige me? Councillor Johnston, thank you. Councillor Johnston moves that this committee rise and report. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carries. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on public hearing items 1 and 2 as noted by the clerk. And a mover and seconder for this report would now be in order. Councillor Robinson and Councillor Demoff, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? The report is adopted. And now a mover and seconder for the consideration and reading of the bylaws would be in order. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Lapworth, all in favor? Opposed, if any? The bylaws are adopted. I thank everyone for their patience, their time and attention. We've completed the agenda, and it's been great working with you, and we are adjourned.